This day was a perfectly normal morning. The time on the clock was 7 a.m. It was time for the morning warm-up. Warm-up. Every day began with a 10-kilometer jog outside. There was cold, unpleasant rain forming puddles, which is not very good for running. The training continued, and at 12 o'clock, fencing began. It was fantastic, with as many as 500 blows on the head. 5 evenings of training. Lee Ho-yeon continued with the coach. It was difficult because he shouted that you need to do as many as 10 approaches. Lee Hee-yeon was unrealistically difficult, but he had to quit his job to keep training for 14 days. As he continued to train hard, someone who knew him kept asking him if he was crazy. Let's go back 15 days. Something unreal and mysterious happened that changed the world and got crazy. People's smartphones began to receive messages saying that a monster had appeared in the Chono area and that all residents of nearby areas were asked to leave. There was widespread panic, and people were frightened because reports said the monster had been spotted in other neighborhoods. The youth started live streaming the monster hunt. Viewers were watching live and spotted the monster. This scary video went viral, and when Lee Ho-young saw it, he was surprised at how realistic it was. He was totally confused as to what it all meant. The scary video had very strange messages, and it was like a scary dream. Lee Hong was walking and puzzled because the world was already complicated, and these messages and this video were just more difficult. He did not want to believe that the video was real. With these thoughts, Lee Ho continued walking and thinking about this situation as he suddenly saw a strange creature caught in a trap. He was initially frightened and jumped up, for he had never seen anything so mysterious, which naturally frightened him. The monster was strange, making wheezing noises with tears in its eyes, and Lee Ho felt like it was asking for help. The creature was cute, but Lee Ho-young still dared not approach it because he did not know whether it was good or evil and what to expect. But as soon as Lee Ho looked into the monster's eyes, something inside him pierced, and immediately, he thought that, in any case, the monster could not help, although he wanted to. Then, the monster showed Lee Hoon a picture of the beast. It was incredible because the beast had a family of little monster children. She was very sad, holding the photo of her family in her hands. The monster was grieving for fear that she would never see them again, hot tears flowing down her cheeks. The monster silently held out something incomprehensible to Lee Ho-yeon. He was wary of taking it into his hands. The unknown is always frightening, and he wonders if he should take such a risk. Lee Ho-young decided to help the monster find out what was in the pouch she held out to him. She explained that it was the silver goblin's medicine. With difficulty, Lee Ho-young released the monster. As a gift, she gave him this silver goblin medicine pouch. He took it and went home. He was sitting looking at this drug, which was giving off a hologram. Suddenly, he heard breaking news on TV, so he decided to watch it. The news anchor talked about some unknown structures that had begun to appear worldwide, and Lee Ho-young became very tense. The world seemed to be going crazy, he thought. First monsters, then unknown structures in the form of towers. Standing in front of the window, holding the gift given by the monster, Lee Ho wondered if the apocalypse was near. He tried to chase these bad thoughts away, when suddenly something exploded outside the window. A powerful blast wave blew out the windows and several pieces of shrapnel hit Lee Hong. People outside the window panicked and chaos broke out. They were all scared, not knowing what was going on. Suddenly, a tower-like structure appeared from the ground, unrealistically huge with many floors. There was frightening news worldwide that the tower had already appeared in Korea. Lee Ho looked at it and didn't know what to do next. He thought maybe the silver goblin's medicine would make a difference because if he took it, he would get something. But Lee Ho decided to take it when, if not now. When he took the medicine, he felt something inside him, something magical happening to him. Suddenly, something glowing bright blue appeared above Lee Hong's head. He heard that he had received a sage window, but what did it mean? Holding his hands in front of him, Lee Hong had a book that glowed brightly and was composed of mosaic puzzles. When he opened the unknown book, he saw that it was written about the end of the world and that he must master several quests before the apocalypse. The book discussed strength training, aerobics, and fencing. Lee Ho decided to put all his business aside and focus only on training. But suddenly, he heard that the gates of the apocalypse had already been opened. Lee Ho could not believe it because he had imagined it differently. Suddenly, an ancient weapon appeared from nowhere behind him. Lee Ho saw it and wondered why he needed it. Looking at the holograms, he was surprised at how much to read, but decided to open the status window and familiarize himself with the information. There was a lot of it. The status indicated that he had been assigned the position of gladiator and that he was proficient in weapons, but he was at the first level and the sage status window was open. Taking the weapon in his hands, he wondered if this was the beginning. In the beginning, it said that he had to be trained and he had to fulfill one of two conditions: survive 60 minutes in the forest or find a way out and escape. After thinking about it, Lee Ho took the 1-hour training session. After opening the status window, he realized that it would still force him to train. According to the strategy, he will have to hunt monsters for a moment. Lee Ho wondered if it would be better to escape from the forest, but he banished these thoughts. Well, he thought that the training had begun. There was no turning back, so he took his weapon and went deep into the forest to catch monsters, taking all the courage in his fist. After walking a bit, Lee Ho met a one-horned raccoon, but it was very cute and did not resemble a monster. How suddenly, in an instant, this cute raccoon turned into a creepy monster with sharp fangs and claws. The raccoon pounced on Lee Ho, but with just one swing of his weapon, he was caught. Oddly, how easy it was, but probably because he was level 1. However, the level of swordsmanship consumes a lot of mana, so Lee Ho thinks and decides to hunt as much as possible to save mana. When he opened the statistics, he saw that he had already reached the 2nd level, and all NR and Mr. had been restored. And suddenly Lee Ho saw that his level had been downgraded again. This made him angry. It turned out that there were penalties for the status window. But looking closer, he saw that his glasses were still intact. Thank God. It wasn't a fine, but probably a mistake, he thought. Being happy about the mistake, Li Hong had a bad idea and thought cheating might be possible. He continued moving through the forest and catching monsters, increasing his experience level. After looking at Li Ho's stats, he was happy that his level had finally risen to 2nd. But suddenly he saw that the level had dropped back to 1, but the remaining points were still accumulating. Then he decided to increase his experience for this. There are 4 options: health strength, strength, dexterity, and sensation. After some consideration, Li Ho decided that the most attractive qualities for a gladiator would be strength, which would give a powerful attack, and dexterity, which would give speed. But the most important thing for him at this particular time was to raise his senses to at least level 4, which was his goal. Still, he defeated the monster, one-horned raccoon, of the 1st level by increasing his senses. His 5 senses became stronger, and finding raccoons became easier for him. Li Hong had to catch as many monsters as possible to activate the hidden quest. A one-horned raccoon appeared before him, but this one differed from the previous, more powerful and frightening. The battle with him was tough. The monster was unrealistically strong and fast, and his horn was powerful. This monster was not like the others. Li Ho compared it more to an evil rhinoceros with evil red eyes. Li Hong's battle with the monster continued. He could not cope with such a strong opponent, but he still defeated the raccoon chief. He still passed the hidden quest and was rewarded with gold. It was a complex and dangerous fight for Li Ho Young. The training is over, he exhaled with a sigh of relief, wondering if it was all over and if he had achieved everything. Suddenly, the space changed and a loudspeaker voice began broadcasting from the tower lobby. Everyone listened attentively. The voice said 14 men were chosen and 11 women were sent here after training. Around the space began to move. The people present began to panic, and Li Ho stood and thought how the world had changed overnight. He calmed himself with all his might because he already knew about the apocalypse and was sure of himself that he would survive it. They all ended up in the apocalypse tower, and people were scared when suddenly a cute little bunny appeared in front of them. He said hello to everyone and introduced himself. He turned out to be the steward of the tower's lower level. His name was Kum Kum. Kum Kum said that from now on, 24 players will play for survival. He also said that all Earthlings are in the same situation as them and that they need to work together to complete the missions on each floor and climb the tower. An overexcited Li Ho asked Malosh if they could return to their normal lives after climbing to the top of the tower. Kum Kum replied that he didn't know. Li Ho asked what the point of them going up the tower was and was told that if they didn't go up, they would all die. Then Li Ho considered the fact that no matter what the strategy was, many people couldn't handle it. The rabbit asked if anyone was present who could destroy him because only in this way could he get home, and he promised to reward the one who would help him. After thinking it over, Li Ho decided it was like a trap. The rabbit must be up to no good. The rabbit Kum Kum turns out to be a level 55th steward, and resisting the newcomers is impossible. After thinking about it, Lee Ho just watched the situation and looked in the strategy guide, which said to help the rabbit go home. His thoughts were confused because he had previously followed the manual and had experienced no losses. Lee Ho thought to go to Kumkum after all. Just as he was about to leave, another man from the crowd overtook him and said with a smile on his face, "If you want to go home, I'll send you home." With a smile more like a grin, he kept laughing at Kumkum, telling him not to regret it and that it'd be tough to send him to the other side. The rabbit Kumkum only stood and smiled, and so their battle soon began. The kid swung his weapon at the rabbit. Suddenly, instead of being a cute little rabbit in front of people, he became a huge, muscular, and unreal strength rabbit, and he attacked the opponent in return. Everyone was horrified. Lee Ho was covered in cold sweat, seeing the lifeless body of the guy who fought Kumkum, realizing that it could have been him. Lee Ho was completely puzzled by this. He didn't understand why the instructions said to help Kumkum, and the strategy guide had lied to him. And suddenly, Li Hong's sage eyes activated an additional function. He was very surprised that there were any other functions besides strategy guidance. Kumkum, the rabbit, was a cute little rabbit again. He stood nicely and begged everyone present for someone to send him at least home. But no one dared confront the rabbit after what they had seen earlier, and suddenly, Lee Ho raised his hand and said he would. At that moment, Kumkum surprised Lee Ho Young by asking if you had the first level. He replied that levels are important for cases, but he replied that they were not. Everyone got into position and Kumkum said, "Come on, help me get home from this job." At this point, a girl approaches Lee Ho and discourages him from fighting. It is dangerous for him, so all the others join her and continue to discourage him. But then Lee Ho calmed them down because he had a plan to send Kumkum home from work. In that instant, the cute Kumkum turned back into a vicious, huge, scary monster and fiercely attacked Lee Ho. The battle continued. At that moment, Lee Ho suspected that Kumkum was lying about the number of people in the tower on purpose to scare them into fear of being sent to the other world. But the fight continued, and people standing and watching were worried about how it would end and who would eventually emerge victorious. Lee Ho guessed that they were all being lied to about Kumkum sending the guy to the other world, about the number of people in the tower, because in front of them was not a lifeless body, but just a hologram created by Kumkum. Kumkum was defeated, and as you can imagine, he turned into a round hologram. He wasn't real, just part of the show. You had to look around, and it surprised everyone. While chatting with others in the tower, Kim Se-young came to him and was rude. He thought it was a waste of time, and that Lee Ho was lucky. He was painfully unpleasant, rude, and talked nonsense about what a hero he was, and if he'd seen it before, he would have volunteered to fight. It was shameless. Lee Ho should have given Kim Se-young his chance to not take it in any way. Lee Ho did not try to restrain himself, but angry, he clenched his fist and made it clear to this rude ignoramus that he would not yield to anyone. They suddenly all heard the announcement that they would now be credited gold for the number of monsters caught, which they could spend at the storefront. It was also said that one player had the largest amount of gold, 7,400. It was very surprising to everyone who was able to get so much. Yes, of course, that player was Lee Ho, but to avoid envious people, he decided not to tell anyone about it, to keep quiet. Here, in the showcase is open, there were indicated 3 things on which you can spend gold. The purchase of things to increase the level of skills and statistics. It would be unwise to spend all the gold, but Lee Ho decided to set all his characteristics to 20 units first. Kim Se lamented why everything was so expensive. Suddenly, Lee Ho was called out by a pretty girl. Her name was Che Yi Seol. She had reached the 3rd level, and surprisingly, she wanted to ask for advice. She looked at him with those cute eyes, praising how brave Lee Ho was, even though he was only level 1. They had a nice conversation. Lee Ho gave her a lot of good advice. He advised her to increase her strength without fear of spending gold, and she thanked him. Suddenly, they heard an announcement that a mission was about to begin on the 1st floor, and they needed to form into groups of 3. Players without groups will be randomly generated, and they only have half an hour to complete the mission. Lee Ho didn't expect the joint mission to come so quickly. Kim Jun-sung suggested that everyone reveal their professions to make it easier for them to decide. He thought there was no reason to refuse to have a Hitler in his group, especially since she was so cute. Unfortunately, the other players did not want to team up with him because few people would want to team up with a gladiator of the 1st level, which is not an attractive proposition. Almost all the players were divided into teams corresponding to their levels, so Lee Ho's team hadn't been assembled, but 30 minutes had already passed. What surprised them when they got the rude Kim Se-young on the team? He was rude. Li Ho wondered if he could even play with him. When the first mission began, they had to destroy the kobold tribe, and they only had 12 hours to do it. As expected, Kim Se-young didn't want or know how to work in a team. He wanted to complete the mission alone, but Li Ho reminded him that it was a team mission. The team started to move, but their disgruntled teammate kept muttering and muttering. He was not happy with everything, and it made the rest of the group very angry. The group continued to move through the mountains, where an unrealistic number of bugs bothered the grumpy Kim scene. Che Yi-seol asked Li Ho if the monsters of this tribe were strong. He replied that he thought they were strong but still on the first floor, and that they could handle it. He also said they should be cautious and vigilant as this is the Tower of Fate, and anything can be expected. Che Yi agreed with him. Suddenly, they saw an unrealistically huge monster on the way. It was a level 5 kobold, and it was nothing like the ones he had fought before. They managed to hide behind a tree, but Li Ho decided they should not hurry to come out, and that it was better to look around so that there were no other monsters. Suddenly they heard something, and it turned out to be Kim Se-yeon. But was he the only one who was going to fight the monster? The monster looked at him in surprise before Kim Se-yeon could understand anything, but their battle continued. Watching what was happening from his hiding place, Li Ho wondered how he could make such decisions alone since they should work as a team. Suddenly, amid the battle, Che Yi-seol came out and decided to help Kim Se-young since the monster looked very strong. Undoubtedly, Kim Se-yeon fought valiantly, but even so, he couldn't stop grumbling, but something was wrong. Watching the battle, Li Ho noticed something strange. For some reason, its damage was very weak compared to the monster's strength. When he suddenly received a new manual that said the kobold monster didn't attack the first for nothing, Kim Se disturbed it. Well, no, you have to think positively. He thought it was a good idea to catch one to study. As the battle continued, suddenly, something happened to Kim Se. His strength seemed to increase. His punch became unrealistically strong, and it turned out that a level 1 stone fist had been activated. A second monster suddenly appeared, but it was different from the first. This kobold monster was stronger and already level 6. He's going to be hard to beat. When everyone thought failure was inevitable and they could not win this battle, Li Ho suddenly came to their aid, and Che Yi-seol was surprised. Because his weapon looked special, he split a ripe apple in two with dexterity and ease. This fight was won thanks to Li Hong activating the first swordsman level. But everyone realized that it was not only because of this that they had defeated Che Yi-seol, and looked at him with a rapturous look of gratitude. And then, looking at them, Li Ho told them that while all the fruit on the trees around them had been eaten, one fruit remained untouched. He received new guidance that he needed to pick fruit from the mountains. The kobolds were vulnerable to this, so Li Ho did. After a tough fight, Li Ho was gallant. He gave Che Yi-seol a hand up to help her stand up and see how she was doing, which really pissed off Kim Se-young. Suddenly, Kim Se-yeon began to shout nervously, insulting Li Hong. He didn't like that Che Yi-seol thought she survived because of him. He yelled that Li Ho was hiding somewhere when it was dangerous, and that he would have sent the monster to the grave without his help. But Li Ho calmly replied that he had understood everything about him when he had swallowed the characterization points. A nervous Kim Se-yeon continued to resent why he, at such a high level, had to put up with this, and they continued on their way. And suddenly, they came across the mysterious settlement of Kobold. They decided to go on whatever it was because they had a mission. They entered the tribe, and the battle began. Arrogant Kim Se-young boasted that he was the strongest in the world of fists and could handle such monsters. While he was fighting the monsters, Li Ho and Che Yi-seol started to rejoice for some reason, as if the Kobold tribe had been defeated. When Kim Se-young was attacked by two monsters, he couldn't fight them off, so he cried and begged for help. Suddenly, he realized that someone had helped him, as the kobolds had stopped hitting him. But who had helped this brute? To his surprise, Li Ho was standing before him, and he reached out to help him up off the ground. He smiled sweetly and asked Kim Se-yoon if he had a comfortable ride because he wanted to accomplish the mission himself. Suddenly, they heard a voice telling them to return to the tower lobby. Did Kim Se-yoon realize he was wrong? He fell at Li Ho's feet and asked to be his big brother. At this time, Li Ho got the second level. He replied to Kim Se-yoon that he treated only one as a brother, and it was his brother. Kim Se-yoon's face twisted with anger because if anyone found out, it would be the end of him, but he couldn't take back his word. When they entered the foyer, they saw that, thanks to Li Hong's luck, they had accomplished the mission first. However, Che Yi-seol disagreed. She thought it was because of Li Ho's observation that she would never have guessed the poison. Here comes the team of Kim Jun-seong and Seo Ju-ho. Since they came back so quickly, they also figured out the poisonous fruit. Will the other teams be able to come back? Suddenly, everyone saw that another team had returned but were exhausted and couldn't stay on their feet. Those present were puzzled as to why so few teams had returned and asked the last team how the other teams were doing. The returning player, kneeling on his knees, remembering all the horror they had to endure, could not hold back tears through his nickname. He replied that only they survived. They were distracted by the loudspeaker's nasty hissing, which began broadcasting again, saying that the mission on the first floor was over for everyone. But the players started shouting that not all the teams had returned from the loudspeaker. They were told that not everyone had survived. 8 people had gone to the afterlife. Everyone realized that not everyone would make it through this mission, but how many more would have to sacrifice to end it all? The team that fully returned and cleared the first floor would win. Everyone began to look at their results. For completing each item, there would be a reward of 1,000 gold, totaling 2,000 gold, and Lee Hoen's team won. Little Lee Ho was a little disappointed, but still decided that gold was a good insurance policy for the future. He decided to get as much of it as possible while he could. All the other team members were very interested in who passed all the tests on the first floor and took first place. There was no point in hiding, and Lee Ho said that his team won first place, but Kim Si-young began his repertoire of mocking the other players. The players were very surprised by this team's victory. Kim Sung asked what was wrong and why they were dissatisfied, and the players began to deny it. Oh, how Lee Ho was amused to see Kim Sung because he remembered how recently he'd been beaten up by the kobolds and now he was acting like a hero. The players whispered about him, saying he had earned a lot of gold by doing nothing and had gotten first place in the second level. But Lee Ho couldn't believe it himself. Jae Yi-seol decided to stand up for him, but Lee Ho stopped her. He wouldn't listen to them and affectionately asked her to look into his eyes to distract her. Kim Jun-seong and Seo Jun-ho calmed down the players as it was not the time to fight. They had to keep working hard. Suddenly, a warning signal came and the blue torch changed to red, leaving the players dumbfounded and stunned. There was an announcement that the survival rate on the first floor in zone 2567 is below average and that a penalty mission has been applied. No one understood what was happening or what would happen next. Even when it was announced that a deadly mission had begun, no one knew what would happen to the players. Players are given 5 minutes to mentally choose one player. If they don't choose one, the vote will be given automatically. Everyone stood scared because no one understood what would happen to the candidate who had more votes. They all stood and waited for an answer. When they found out that the one to whom more votes would go to the other world, in the eyes of the players appeared to be fearful and panicked. They did not know what to expect from each other. The time was ticking fast, and everyone was in panic. Chae Yi-seol offered to choose each other so that they could avoid this mission, but the players did not dare to do so. Suddenly, the first player, Seo Ji-hong, made his choice, and it fell on Lee Hong. However, he didn't know that everyone would see the result of his choice. No one wanted to go to the afterlife, so Chae Yi-seol defended her option, but no one was sure that this option would work, and that they would all stay alive. Surprisingly, everyone decided to vote for Lee Hong. The players agreed that since he's level 2, it's easier to do so. Only Jae Yi-seol didn't want to give him her vote because it was possible to follow her plan and save Lee Hong. The masks had fallen, and it was clear who was who. The last, with a snide smile, Kim Seen gave his voice, but he probably forgot that Lee Ho had saved him from the kobold monsters on the first mission. Time was up, and now this deadly portal opened up. Lee Hong didn't know what awaited him in this portal. He approached the portal entrance fearlessly. It was a game, and Lee Ho was ready for this mission. He didn't want to talk about guilt or relief, so he decided to walk up to the portal silently, but he didn't feel like a victim. A manual said that Lee Ho had a high chance of completing this mission, and that he should expect gifts. The players were sad and felt sorry for Lee Hong. Kim Jun-sung said he felt sorry for him, and even though they didn't know each other very well, he thought they were comrades. Kim Seung was the only one who still shamelessly believed that since Lee Ho had a second level, he had achieved nothing. He was only pulling benefits from him and not achieving everything himself. Everyone was discussing and wondering if Lee Ho would return from this mission in one piece, but he was good, and the guys believed in Neo. Meanwhile, Lee Ho finds himself in a place that reminds him of the kobold tribe and makes him feel creepy. He studied the guide on his hologram and thought he would still vote for himself, but it was good that things were going his way. Ho's premonitions were not good, and he heard that the kobold hunting party had returned. The mission is challenging. He has to send the chief and the hunting group of kobolds, who are very angry about the death of their tribe members. This kobold leader was the boss of this dungeon as a 12th level leader, but like the others, he was vulnerable to poison, which is good. Preparing his weapons for battle, Li Ho considered how he would be alone against the boss and the other kobolds. It seemed almost impossible. The battle was not easy to fight alone. Fighting a bunch of monsters is not easy. Li Ho activated basic weaponry. The group was defeated. Only the boss was left. Still, Li Ho decided to first see who the boss monster of the death mission was. He was huge and intimidating. The fight continued to be brutal, and Li Hong's opponent became a powerful monster because he was the boss. He threw a punch at the boss, and the boss minimized it by jumping back during the punch. But it's a monster boss, and you'd expect that from him. When all of a sudden, the monster boss started squealing and ran away. That's the twist that the monster boss suddenly got. Suddenly, the moon in the sky turned bright red. Li Ho and the boss monster looked at it and didn't understand what was happening. In the tower's lobby, Kim Sayong was telling everyone that Li Ho had already gone to the other side, and he decided to guide the other players to the end of the floor. But Che Yi-seol didn't stop praying for Li Hong. Even though Kim Seung kept saying that he was dead, she didn't believe it. Jae Yi-seol couldn't take it anymore and yelled at Kim Seung so that he would have a conscience, at least in this situation that is happening to the world. In the midst of the arguments, suddenly everyone was distracted by a light. It was as if the portal where Li Ho had gone had reopened, which everyone could hardly believe. He went out with a smile because he was happy that he had managed to pass this mission and come back alive, even though he was a little wounded. In this mission, the kobold chief had a peculiarity because when his eyes turned red, his abilities increased, and he became stronger. But Li Ho did not give up then because he saw that to defeat Chief Kobold, he only needed one blow, but he did not understand how to do it. This monster chief was very strong. He easily punched a hole in the wood as if it were soft tough. He was tasked with figuring out how to defeat the kobold, but his weapon couldn't penetrate a wall. It cut. Li Ho then decided to try to overpower it when the monster rushed at him, which would give him extra momentum plus his own weight. All this should work, thought Li Ho. When the monster came at him, he drew his weapon and gave it a crushing blow. Chief Kobold was defeated. He made it through, and his ability grew to include stabbing. He passed the death mission and returned to the rest of the players. Che Yi-seol, who was so happy, ran towards him because she believed in his victory and that he would come back alive from this mission. Suddenly, they were interrupted by the hypocritical Kim Se-young, who shoved all the players into Li Ho's arms and shouted that he believed in his brother, even though he didn't. He was also surrounded by all the other players who were curiously asking him how he had completed such a difficult mission. No one understood why Li Ho passed this difficult mission. He should have earned a lot of experience, but he remained at the second level. Li Ho himself did not understand anything. He thought that the world wanted the weak to remain weak, because since school, no one believed that he could achieve success. But he knew from a young age that he had to be strong because the world is cruel, and there are a lot of prejudiced people who are hard to change their minds. Only Che Yi-seol never stopped believing in Li Ho and proving to others that he was a real hero. Not everyone could pass a deadly mission. Also, the hypocritical Kim Se-yeon continued his show, outraged that they didn't throw a comeback party in honor of his brother Li Ho. But Li Ho knew that he was just being hypocritical. In fact, he genuinely disliked him, and behind his eyes, he didn't have the best opinion of him. But no matter what, Li Ho realized he had to do everything possible to keep everyone in the tower alive, so he stepped out and addressed the people around him. He took out his weapon and showed them that he already had an indomitable weapon of rare rank featuring strength and attack of 15%. Everyone was amazed, for there was no information about this old long gun anywhere, but it was more valuable than a bit of experience. Li Ho growled. They had forgotten that they had almost sent him to the other side of the world, and now they thought he should save them. Seo Ji-hong approached him and admitted that he was selfish by voting for Li Ho, that their act was similar to if they had just banished him. He was genuinely sorry that they sent him to his doom, and with tears in his eyes, he said he was glad that Li Ho had come back alive. The player, A. Soyeon-jin, did not feel remorseful at all. She thought that someone had gone there and that Li Ho was lucky because he still received a rare weapon. Li Ho stopped their argument because he started this conversation not to shame anyone, but to prevent it from happening again. It was clear from the first vote that the tower was trying to divide them against each other. It wanted conflict and mistrust between them. He also said that his return proved that they could go against the tower's plans if they were together and more likely to survive. Players listened to him and asked if he had a plan. Li Ho said he would look for ways to save as many lives as possible. Che Yiseol said that to do this, all the players must be united and agree to save lives and return to normalcy. When he suddenly appeared cute, Kukum announced a new task. This game was for survival, and the players were surprised that he reappeared. He told the players that the second-level quest, Battle Royale, would take place in this location. It would involve 15 players. The game should be easy, said Kumkum. It's just entertainment for them, and they shouldn't get upset. According to the rules of the game, there are 16 players and 16 of their doubles, for a total of 32 participants. They have to send all the doppelgangers into the world, but the doppelgangers will have the same stats and even the same memories. The most important thing for the players was that they did not get any rewards for the double, but if they sent another player to the other world, they got a lot of rewards. The players didn't like these rules at all. Kumkum added that if no one sends anyone to the other side in half an hour, they will be called to the lobby, and there will be trouble. The first level had not yet started as suddenly appeared a monster for the players. It was just a disaster. He was huge. Everyone in the lobby panicked, and the second level hadn't started yet. Little Kumkum, with a smile on his face, reminded the players that they would be returned to the lobby in half an hour if they did not fulfill the conditions. Then, the players decided to fight the monster, combining all their forces. But there was no point in this because the monster remained unharmed. They were doing everything they could, but nothing helped. They all had no more strength to fight, and their mana was almost zero. When there was no more hope, Li Ho decided to try combining the indomitable weapon with the stabbing blow, but he wasn't sure if it would work. Then Li Ho gathered his strength and went into battle with the monster players. He watched the spectacle and prayed to God that he succeeded. With a special stabbing blow, Li Ho defeated this monster, and the players began chanting his name and cheering his victory. However, Li Ho Yun felt that something had changed, and he felt worse. His well-being rapidly deteriorated. Glancing at the manual, he saw that he had used up more than his normal strength that would last 3 minutes. He lost consciousness and woke up 3 minutes later when the state of powerlessness was lifted. When he woke up, he saw the other players around him who were very worried about him. The first to speak was Seo Jun Ho. He said he couldn't believe why Li Ho was so modest and substantial, and that his fainting ceremony was perfect. But Li Ho hit his head when he fell and didn't understand anything. He asked the people around him what had happened and where this monster disaster was. The smiling cutie Kumkum replied that it was just a demonstration and the monster Li Ho sent back, but he guessed it was just a demonstration, nothing more. Also, cute Kumkum reminded me that someone has to go to the other side of the world and that the sender may be someone standing next to me. Satisfied with himself, he said goodbye to the players because his work for the day was over, waved goodbye, and left. Players in the lobby began to discuss how to complete this mission because if, in half an hour, there was no lifeless body, they would again face the disaster. Someone suggested making a mark that only they would know about, but it didn't fit because the doppelgangers have their memories, and then Li Ho called out to them. He explained that his plan would require him to be alone on this mission. The players were very surprised by Li Ho Young's plan because they didn't understand how it worked or what they were supposed to do. Li Ho explained that they should gather at the highest point of the floor, and if anyone else was acting beside him, it was a double who could be eliminated. The players started to resent why they should listen to him and do as he said, even though he was really not bad. Li Ho recalled Kumkum's words. He was sure it was the best plan, so no matter what the tower said, he was sure it was turning them against each other. The players begrudgingly agreed to Li Ho's plan to minimize their damage, and he convinced them that he would distinguish the doppelganger. Well, the second floor mission has been initiated. The rules are to send one person to the grave within 30 minutes. Looking in the guide, Li Ho saw that he had received a gift of absolute flair. It would help him distinguish doppelgangers, and he rejoiced because he was sure that he could. He saw and felt that all 5 senses were developed to the limit, and he spent half of his earned gold on it, but it was worth it. Suddenly, he heard some mumbling, and Kim Se-young was wailing about his disagreement with Li Ho's plan. Suddenly, Li Ho heard a horrible smell, even though it was 500 meters away from him. He felt that it was a doppelganger, and immediately he sent him to the other world. Looking at his weapon, Li Ho thought he was able to distinguish them and make the right choice. Now the main thing is that everyone should stick to his plan. He saw that a player had been sent to the other world, but he did not realize who had done it, whether it was the doppelgangers who had started to act or which of the players had to be found out. He realized he had to find him quickly and went looking for him. Suddenly, he saw that there were already 14 players, which meant that one more player had been defeated, and he had to find the culprit. Suddenly, he smelled that foul odor and saw the Lee Ho doppelganger attacking him. During the fight, the doppelganger was defeated. Lee Ho was afraid it was his doppelganger, but it turned out that it was Kan Yun Woon. He approached Lee Ben-cheol's lifeless body and noticed something strange. He saw his wound and realized that it didn't match Gun Woo's weapon. As he looked closer, he realized that the wound had been left by another weapon, when suddenly, in the distance, he saw someone walking. It was Kim Jong-soon, who was shot in the shoulder with the same weapon as him, so it must have been his double. At that moment, Kim Jong pointed his weapon at Lee Ho because he couldn't tell the difference between a doppelganger and a non-doppelganger, but Lee Ho convinced him he wasn't a doppelganger. After telling Lee Ho to watch out for his double, he fell down and Lee Ho helped him up. They were walking when they met Yo-sol, who offered to help cure Kim Jun. But Lee Ho's powers didn't deceive him. He sensed they were doppelgangers, even though they tried to pretend they didn't understand by pretending to be players. They decided to take one doppelganger each and send them to the afterlife for good. For a second, Lee Ho wondered why the doppelgangers stood so openly before him, especially Yi-sol, who knew about his strength. Suddenly, he realized that somewhere he had made a mistake and something was wrong with Kim Jones. He pointed a gun at Lee Ho and wounded his cheek. He realizes that Kim Jong is not a doppelganger, but he wonders why he is standing with the doppelgangers and fighting against Lee Ho with him. After looking at Lee Ho's stats, I realized he was an archer and had previously been a deep-sea fisherman. Smiling evilly, Kim Jong kept asking Lee Ho what he felt in this situation, whether it was betrayal, disappointment, or anger. That vile Kim Jong didn't know that Lee Ho could see other players' statuses. He saw that Kim Jo's stats went up, which only meant one thing. It turns out he was the one who sent the players to the grave, the one who turned out to be a traitor and a murderer. But did Lee Ho ask if you're doing it for the gold and stats, and if you're willing to kill people? Kim Jo replied that in a world where killing is not punished but encouraged, why not kill? He liked it. I remember when Lee Ho proposed his plan, and Kim Jo was the first to agree. At the time, he thought he was just going along with it out of desperation, but Kim Jo turned out to be a psycho and a murderer. The fight began, and during it, Lee Ho realized that Kim Jo had more abilities than he had shown before. He could release arrows in succession. Lee Ho wondered how he had persuaded the twins to fight with him for one thing, to make a perfect, strong team. Kim Jo replied, like a deep-sea fisherman, that to catch big fish, you have to be organized. So he did, and the doppelgangers filed out. The battle began 1 against 3. They are an insanely strong team of swordsmen, healers, and archers, the perfect combination. But despite their superior combination, they were still powerless against actual power, and he could overpower the doppelgangers. When Kim Jo realized he was powerless against Lee Ho, he knelt in front of him and tearfully begged Lee Ho to spare him. He said he'd just lost his mind and didn't know how he'd crossed a line he shouldn't have crossed, tearfully asking for one last chance. But it was again his cunning plan to distract Lee Hong, distracting. He jumped up from his knees and tried to deliver a crushing blow. But Lee Ho could not believe him and expected such a turn. He swung his weapon over his head and delivered a crushing blow, sending Kim Jong to the grave. Of course, he didn't want to do that. It was a forced measure. He saw that the way of the flesh had opened up to him, and he allowed him to walk in the way of the flesh. If he accepted this challenge, he could get stat boosts and doppelganger support. Then, he realized how Kim Jo was able to control the doppelgangers. A maiden appeared in front of Lee Ho and said that if he accepted the way of the flesh, he would receive legendary level armor and access to legendary skills. He'll also get a significant stat increase, and exclusive talents are a tempting offer. But Lee Ho didn't think long because he didn't want to become a psychopathic murderer. He refused the offer and went to look for players. After a while, Lee Ho saw all the players waving to him and beckoning him over. He was very happy that they were all together. He thanked the players, saying that they still trusted him, even though his offer was difficult to accept. Suddenly, everyone saw that there were now 2 Lee Hans. Who should they believe now because one of them is a double, and whether he had foreseen such a situation? Then Lee Ho explained to everyone that he had plans to deal with his doppelganger first, but Jun Sung prevented him from doing so. No matter what, this game will only be between Li Hun and his doppelganger. However, the other players didn't know what to do because they couldn't tell the difference between the doppelganger and the real player, so they asked Li Ho to help them. Li Ho then thought that there were 8 players left, and if he revealed the names of those he had already dealt with, the real players would be identified. Then Li Ho began to reason why the first people he had to fight with were the doppelgangers Kim Soen and Jae Yi Sol, who were the closest. He said that if the doppelganger were right, then Kim Jun-sun's doppelganger would make it hard for the players to tell which Li Ho was real. When everyone started discussing it, suddenly one Li Ho called the other a murderer, but why? Then Li Ho confessed that he was the one who killed Kim Jun-soon. The second Li Ho was happy that the first one was giving up. Then the real Ho said he had a fact that the doppelganger didn't know Kim Jun was a traitor and ruined the real player. An Sung-chan helped him win, and only then did the players believe that Kim Jun was a hypocrite and a traitor, and that Li Ho was the real deal. Then the players grouped together. They were all to follow Li Ho as their leader, listening to and executing his plans. Then Li Ho suggested that players spend all their gold and raise their stats in this mission. They're stronger than they were yesterday, and therefore stronger than the doppelgangers. Everyone realized the upcoming battle would be fierce, but Li Ho felt weak for some reason. He sat there wondering what could be the reason why he had gotten the special ability. But whatever it is, he that people believe in him, and he must do everything he can to save them and reach the top of the tower. The players agreed that despite Li Ho's level, he had done more than all of them combined. He must have been given the ability, but had his levels taken away. When thinking about An Se-chan, Li Ho said that he was very cautious and prudent, and should be looked up to as a support for the future. Everyone apologized for doubting him. The first mission partners, Jae Yi Sol and Kim Soen, started arguing over who had noticed Li's uniqueness first. Li Ho was approached by An Se-chan and asked him to lead them to victory. The battle was coming to an end. The players had defeated what they thought at the time were all the doppelgangers, but were they? However, one doppelganger remained undefeated, but Li Ho found him and sent him to the other side. The coward hid in the bushes. The players coped with this mission and returned to the lobby with almost the whole staff. Then the calculation of gold began. It depended on the work done. The players received different amounts of gold. Kim Seung received 2,000 gold, which he probably thought was the maximum reward. But Li Ho realized that it was because everyone had followed his plan, and he was surprised to see that he had received 12,500. When he reached 10,000 gold, he could access an improved store. He realized that he needed to increase the store's rank to buy rare items. When Yi Seol saw that she had received 1,200 gold from Li Ho, she wondered why he had done that. He explained to her that when he fought the kobolds with the doppelgangers, she was there to help, and because of her, they were smiling wherever they were. His speech touched and moved her, and he promised her that she would become stronger and upgrade the ability of her healing hand to level 2. Of course, Li Ho didn't forget about Kim Seung. He gave him 200 gold pieces and advised him not to fool around but to study more. He realized that despite his lack of seriousness, he could be nurtured and valuable to the team. Kim Sayong said that he was now a sycophant, which was very funny. Now it's time for the third floor siege mission, in which players will meet players from other districts for the first time. Under the terms of their team's assignment, they are assigned an attack mission. They need to capture the castle and occupy the altar. Failure to comply will result in a 24-hour penalty. The players have received a temporary item, the return stone, but they have yet to figure out what it is for. But Li Ho guessed its effect and asked Seo Yun to climb to the top of the mountain and open the gate. He realized that this stone would bring him back to life when he died. Although he feared for his life at first, he did it because Li Ho asked him to, and he trusted him. Now he is in front of the gate. With all his strength in his fist, he was sure he would defeat everything and be able to open this gate. With each blow Kim Sa-young threw, the gate's strength rapidly decreased, and it didn't take him long to open it. But it's not as simple as they wanted it to be. It works differently. The gate takes 2 seconds to regenerate. As Kim Sa-yeon listened, he heard the other team's players saying that they needed to put a shield on the castle wall to protect it. As he walked a little further, he saw the altar they needed to occupy. About 10 players from the other team were on it. The cocky Se-yeon remembered that Li Ho had said not to destroy anyone, but he was cocky and decided to defeat the opponents single-handedly, thinking they were weak. Before getting close to them, he felt he had been hit by something powerful that he had not expected. When he returned to his own, he said that one of the players had a very powerful firearm. Li Ho thought, it's amazing because at this level, it's impossible to wield it. Even their player An Sung Chan's military doesn't have such a weapon. Li Ho remembered the conditions offered to him at the second level, which only meant that whoever wielded it was a ruthless thug. He realized it would be a hard fight, but Che Yisol approached him and affectionately said she would support him, and the team members were ready to fight him. Li Ho's plan is for them to act because he has absolute instincts to see where the guards are at the castle. Seyon said there were only 2 of them. They'll approach the castle walls, and Seyon will draw their attention to himself as he knows how. The guards will defend the castle, but even if they take Seyon's life, they'll think that coming back to life is his ability. It was a shock to Kim Se-young because he didn't want to die, even with the possibility of coming back to life with the stone. But that's the worst possible outcome. Li Ho explained that it was for the worst, and would be a distraction while he used his shoulder to deflect the arrows. He'll climb the castle and send the guards to the afterlife while they wait for him to execute his plan. The team expectedly agreed to Li Ho's plan, but they will have to attack at full strength. If they mess up, the opponents will know what the return stone is for. The players went to fulfill the mission. Se-yeon explained that he would open the gate, but the gate would close again if they delayed. But after opening the second level of the stone fist and punching the gate, Se-yeon lost a lot of strength and fell powerless to the ground. It's a good thing they have Che Seol, the healer. When he saw the same player with the firearm, he realized that she was a woman, but how did she get the gun? From her characterization, he realized she was a level 15 assassin, which meant only one thing. At level 2, she was a mass murderer. She pointed her weapon at Li Ho, and from a great distance, she was able to hit him. She was more aggressive than he thought. But Li Ho wasn't stupid when he bought the leather Kali that saved him. He also calculated that since she was using the same caliber magazine as him, she wasn't buying items to restore mana. After calculating that she had 13 rounds left, the team decided to rush forward. They needed to get to the altar to win, so they rushed forward. But it was tough, and An Sung Chang's military advice was to zigzag to avoid injury so she could hit the target more easily. They figured she only had enough mana for one shot and not enough to kill Kim San. It was a tough fight, but thanks to the healer Che Yosol's presence, their chances of living increased many times over. That lady, Song Suan, was unrealistically violent, pointing guns even at her teammates and driving them into battle ahead of her. Close combat was merciless, and long in it, the team lost a lot of players. Li Ho realized they would revive, but how could you destroy people with such a calm face? With all his strength in his fist, Li Ho still managed to capture 1/3 of the altar, but he needed to get rid of his opponent for a complete victory. 3 more people from Li Ho's team had to go to the altar to take over, but first, we had to deal with Xian Xian. She threw a punch, but Li Ho read it and could dodge it, which surprised her. Li Ho explained that he could do it because of Sung Ju Hong's clue. In the past, he was a legendary ping-pong player, nicknamed the Prediction Genius. Thanks to the game, he can determine where the enemy will hit by looking at him. At the wrong time, the opposing team finished with the opponents. Scene blurted out that they should hurry up before the opposing team's players returned from the dead. Then, Song Soan realized what the resurrection stone was for. Li Ho told her it didn't matter if she could hit him, he could withstand it. He decided to give her one last chance to strike one last blow at him and finally end the relationship for good. But Song Soan wouldn't give up and give them the altar. Suddenly, she decided to raise her sniper level to level 4. The mission of the 3rd floor was completed by fighting a difficult opponent when she struck Li Ho at the last moment, piercing her with his weapon. The 3 players then took their seats on the altar, signifying their victory. Each player hoped they would never meet their opponents again. A portal suddenly opened, and they saw all the players in the group they had recently fought with. Here, before the losing team, disaster descends on the players who didn't send anyone to death on the 3rd floor. It was frightening because they had no chance to regain their lives. The players panicked and asked Li Ho's team for help. Chi Isol offered to help them, but the team didn't know how to do it. It was chaos. Suddenly, the loudspeaker rattled, saying that only one player would remain alive in the zone with 142, and that the groups were being reorganized. No one understood how it was possible if the only member of the opposing group who could send the opponent to the grave was Song Soon. But as much as the players don't like the new group formed against their choices, they suddenly find themselves in a ruined city. The 4th floor's instructions are to hunt monsters and find portals to get out in 6 hours. Before they can recover, a catastrophe will strike the city. The portals are randomly generated. It was also said that there would be 20 portals in total, and it was strictly forbidden to pass them to each other. Players liked this mission because they finally had to fight with monsters and not with each other, and portals enough players, only 13. While preparing for the battle, they thought about the portals because they couldn't be transmitted. If one person opens several portals, someone won't escape. Then Li Ho wondered if the tower could not be so generous with portals, and most likely, it was preparing a trap for them as always. Then, the players decided that they would work together. As soon as the portal opened, they immediately abandoned the hunt and ran into it. Looking and smiling at the team, Li Ho realized that everyone understood the mission, and they had truly become a team. The newcomer, Song Soon, didn't want to work in a team, let alone listen to someone else and act according to someone else's plan. 12 hours ago, when she joined the team, no one wanted her on the team, so she had a fight with Kim Seong. Li Ho then explained that she was in a foreign land and should behave herself without causing trouble for anyone on the team. Standing in front of Song Soon's face, Li Ho told her in her eyes that they were not friends with her and were unlikely to be after everything that had happened. Suddenly, Song Soon's face changed from beautiful to something horrible. Li Ho saw that the soul killer wanted to make him the primary target. Opening his guide, Li Ho saw that it had been updated to say that the Soul Crusher had recognized his value and that he was now the main target. Back to the 4th floor mission, the first person to get the monster was Kim Se-young. Looking at him, he thought he wasn't that scary. After easily defeating the monster, Kim Se saw that a portal had opened before him. Still, he was eager to continue hunting, so he didn't enter the portal. He continued hunting, and on the way, he met Li Ho. He asked why Kim Seong was so surprised to see him and said no. He asked Li Ho if he had opened the portal, and then he immediately guessed that Kim Se had. They went to him, and Li Ho forced him into the portal. He saw that his guide had been updated again, and it said that on the Day of Blood, a thug's characteristics were fully revealed by stripping him. On this day, she will receive many honors. Li Ho didn't know when this day was, but was sure that many would lose their lives. On the way, Li Ho met a monster. During the fight, Li Ho gained experience points. He realized that now he needed to become as strong as possible. He thought he should keep an eye on Song Soon and do something about her. Suddenly, he was struck by such a stinking odor that it was impossible to breathe, as if a lifeless body was lying next to him. When he opened the guide, he read that the stench came from the orcs, but the orcs that came out of the portal stunk even worse. In front of Li Ho stood a huge, green, foul-smelling monster that was clearly not friendly. The fight was not very long, but it was tough enough. Li Ho defeated the monster, and a portal opened. But was it the right portal? When he meets Song Soon, he has to make her fulfill her mission to him. He abruptly fell to his knees in front of her. Surprised and dumbfounded, Song Soon stood there and didn't understand why he did that. In the blink of an eye, Li Ho looked up at her, and suddenly pleaded with her not to ruin him and to let him live. On his knees, he continued to lament his unlucky fate. He had never won anything in his life, not even a portal. But Song Soon didn't know that this was his plan. In fact, he had already opened one portal and would have left quietly if he wanted to. He did it so she'd give him her booty. If he dies on this mission, she can't take his life. Looking at the monitor, he realized that 5 of the 20 portals were left, which meant that his other players had no problems with them. He purposely moaned that there were few portals left. Song Soon became furious and shouted at him to shut up and silently continue hunting. After the fight with the orc, Li Ho noticed that he felt both exhilaration and guilt after killing the orc, and he compared it to his relationship with Song Soon. She followed him around. Li Ho saw that she was agitated. He asked her why he hadn't opened anything yet. He asked her to honestly answer how many portals she had already opened. Song Soon replied that she had already opened 5 portals. Then Li Ho calculated that if she opened 5 and he won, the other 11 would be enough to open 1 each and 3 more portals left. He realized that if there were 3 portals left, there would be just the 2 on the 4th floor, so he decided to split up with her. Standing in front of the giant orc he had defeated, he suddenly saw that there were only 10 minutes left and had to hurry. As he ran faster, he told Song Soon that he would get out and let her go her own way. Suddenly, she called out to him. He was very surprised that she could want anything from him. It's only 10 minutes away. Doesn't she understand? Sensing something wrong, Li Ho decided that the best thing to do now was to just run away from her. And then he felt her grab his sleeve so hard that Li Ho almost fell backward. Strong girl, he thought. Turning to her, Li Ho didn't understand what was wrong with her. But Song Soen tearfully said that she didn't remember where her portals were. She didn't seem to be oriented. Of course, Lee Hoon didn't leave her alone. He took her with him even though she still wanted to destroy him. Back in the lobby, as happy as ever, Kim Sayeon ran into Lee Ho's arms, screaming that he knew he was coming back again. But instead of a hug, he got a fist in the face because his antics scared Lee Ho and almost ruined the mission. When they first met, they were all happy to be back. They thought they were enemies, but now they're allies. Only Song Soen didn't want to be part of the team, and she and Kim Seung didn't like each other. Thinking over the situation, Lee Ho realized that she needed supervision. He hoped she would feel indebted to him. Remembering the day of blood shook him, but he thought that until that day, all should be well and nothing should happen. When that troublemaker, cute Kum Kum, reappeared, there would be a new challenge. Suddenly, Song Soon pointed her weapon at him and asked why he was there again. She just blew his head off. But nothing happened to him. He came at her and fought back so hard that she slammed into the wall. Looking at her helplessly, Lee Ho realized the rabbit still took pity on her, meaning the tower needed her for something. Kum Kum, smiling as always, suggested that everyone calm down because there was a new challenge ahead on the next floor. But before the test, he changed the foyer to look like a library. Why? The players thought. Kum Kum said that they should choose one book for each. Their lives would depend on that book in the future, and they should choose wisely. The players in the lobby wondered which books would be best to choose to be useful, but Kum Kum added that when the mission started, all the books would disappear. After he said goodbye, he disappeared again, and the players ran to look for books because they needed to find useful books for them. Of course, everyone was looking for books that belonged to their class, but Lee Ho suddenly received a guide that told him where to find a certain book. As said in the book Chance Encounters of the SSS class, regressor Lee Ho did not understand why he needed to read the novel. But there is no going back. The choice cannot be changed. When he opened the book, Lee Ho didn't understand why he needed this book with a cheap title and content similar to an idiotic pop fantasy. While the other players chose books related to their classes, Lee Ho already regretted his choice and felt like a total loser. He decided to walk through the library and ask the other players what each of them was reading. Suddenly, he heard some muttering behind a shelf. He saw Song Soon reading a book, beating a toy rabbit, and saying she would kill it, so he decided not to disturb her. When time was up, they were carried to the 5th floor and found themselves in a strange room that resembled a school classroom. Time in the room stopped long ago, and the players noticed they also seemed to have returned to school age. It was funny to see a shaved Kim Seung. Yes, he was shaved, but the players noticed he hadn't changed much. Looking at Chae Yo-sol, Lee Ho noticed that she had changed a lot, but was still as cute as ever. But Jun-ho thought she hadn't changed. Lee Ho looked around and saw a girl sitting at the desk with him. He asked if she was Song Soen, but she was different, which made her angry and caused her to shout at him. Suddenly, the loudspeaker wheezed and everyone tensed up. What will be the next broadcast, Rabbit Kum Kum? He said that the new task of the 5th floor would be a role-playing game. He said that this place is a different dimension where monsters and humans exist, and the players are now cadets who learn to hunt monsters. For 4 days, quests will appear, and those who do not cope with them will be sent on a deadly mission advising them to screw up less. The players were very frightened, but Lee Ho remained calm because he had already successfully completed the deadly mission. He realized that ordinary players could not cope with it. After Kum Kum's command to begin, a memory download was triggered, as if their heads were being injected with memories they'd read. The injection is over, and the quests won't start for another 4 days, so while the task started, suddenly, the people who were motionless moved. Lee Ho wondered if this was a novel. He and his friends would be the characters in the final roles when he noticed the handsome Oh Yoon Nam and decided he was the main character. To top it all off, he is a regressor who knows the future. With this knowledge, he will have many chance encounters and gain immense power. The teacher asked a question about a substance and said that if the correct answer was given, he would give the student points to buy the substance at the store. Of course, the average cadet could hardly answer this question, but the handsome Oh Yoon Nam answered that this substance is called excision. Smiling, Lee Ho added that Brown's team is currently doing his research at the University of Columbia. The teacher was surprised that there was such a smart cadet in the class, and points were assigned to Lee Hong. Now he understood why this particular book was recommended to him. But the handsome Oh Yoon Nam wasn't too happy about it and threatened Lee Hoon that he would take away all the powers he had. Walking around the courtyard, Kim Tae-yeon asked Lee Ho how he knew about this substance. Lee Ho explained that he had acquired it through his new memories. Li Ho remembered the novel and thought it would be now if the book was actual. Then came the manual for the new quest, which everyone began to read. It said that they needed to clear the dungeon in 37 minutes, given only 1 hour. It was also said that there would be a boss in the dungeon, and the item that will fall out when you win from him in the future is very useful. Deciding that this item should go to him, Li Ho shouted loudly to the players that it was time to leave, and they ran into the dungeon. When the players entered the orc's lair, they met Oyunam. He asked how they got into the lair, which surprised the players because he could not go there alone. As he watched the battle with the orcs, Oyunam wondered why the cadets of this class were so strong. He was especially struck by the strength of Li Hoan and Song Soan. They were insanely strong and experienced, and he thought it was strange how he could not notice them. Taking his spear, thinking that if he did nothing, he would be left with nothing, he gathered his strength and went into battle with the orc. The fight was spectacular, and Oyunam's strength was unreal. Players were very surprised by such strength, even Li Ho. But he will never give up. The difficulty is that to pass the quest and get the reward, you need to defeat a lot of orcs and knock out the right to fight the boss. Of course, Oyunam may be stronger, but seeing and catching monsters like that is still Li Hong's specialty. No matter what the players thought, the orcs would not defeat themselves, and the battle went on, and there were quite a few of them. Undoubtedly, Song Soon, with her firearms, went ahead of many players. She is undeniably a fine warrior. Even in this battle, Oyunam was superior with his golden weapon. He could handle the orcs with ease. As the other players watched the battle, they noticed that Li Ho was fighting more desperately than usual. They watched the cool Li Ho with rapt attention and realized he was doing it all for them, even though they voted for him on the death mission. Taking up arms, they decided to fight for their saint, Li Ho. When they heard the guys chanting Saint Li Ho, he was very surprised at the heresy. All defeated monsters were created in the boss room, which can fight the strongest player, all tensed, who will be announced. It was announced that Yun Nam would be fighting the boss, which made Li Ho angry because he had tried his best. He couldn't give up, so he went to Yun Nam and asked him to give it to him. In surprise, he asked if Li Ho had lost his mind and would never give it to him. Li Ho asked Yun Nam if he didn't want to know how to break the chain of regression, which interested him. They entered the boss's room together. Yun Nam pointed his gun at Li Ho and asked him who he was and how he knew he was a regressor. Looking at him, Li Ho asked if it was important and if he was bored, referring to the 32-year winter. Yun Nam tensed up. And he told me that he knew his regression began in November of 17, and he was right. Then, Yun Nam confessed that he was very tired of this regression. Li Ho said that if he gave up the boss room, he would tell him how to break the chain of regression. He could break the curse of infinite regression. He knew Yun Nam had dreamed of it for thousands of years. Li Ho said it was the only option to accept the offer. Yun Nam agreed to the proposal, but warned Li Hong that if he was joking, he wouldn't be happy, so he turned around and left the room. Of course, Yun Nam gave up his right to fight in front of Li Ho, and a huge orc boss appeared. Seeing this monster, Li Ho was covered with cold sweat. It was so scary, but he already knew how to fight it. Suddenly, the monster used the orc warrior's roar. Normally, opponents would lose their morale from this roar, but not Li Ho. Because his absolute sense of smell not only amplifies his senses, but also blocks them, and the mental sonic attack has no effect on him. Li Ho took a closer look and saw that the boss had a steel torso, but the lower part was vulnerable, so he gave him a series of crushing blows and dealt with the orc boss. After clearing out the boss's room, Li Ho returned to the team. He and Kim Sa-young sat playing rock, paper, scissors. He was very nervous that Li Ho was always winning. He suspected Li Ho of cheating, but how can you cheat in this game? Che Yosol witnessed a fair game. The item that fell off the monster was a beautiful ring with an emerald stone. There are only 2 magic items in this novel. The first is Yun Nam's weapon, Gungnir, which is always guaranteed to hit the target when thrown. The second item was the mythical ring of Niki Li Ho. Its essence was that it increased the owner's luck, but it could not be given to others. He sat there thinking that he now had to fulfill his promise to Yun Nam because he wanted only one thing in the world. Sun Suan approached him and asked him to play with her. She said it was not just a game of luck, but a test of reflexes. She said that her dexterity score was close to 50. She bet on winning 3,000 gold, but Li Ho raised it to 5,000. The next day, the cadets were assembled at a cliched stage. In front of them stood a huge bright blue crystal machine for measuring power. The teacher explained that magic would be measured when they hit the stone, and the measurement results would benefit them in 2 days. The first cadet went to the stone, and from the first stroke, the result showed 43. Judging by the cadet's reactions, it was an excellent result. The next cadet came out and knocked out even more, as many as 69, which surprised everyone because it's quite a lot. Kim Se-in came to the stone next. Because strength is his specialty, he hit the stone with his bare hands, and the result was 75 without weapons. It was Song Suin's turn to fire her weapon, and her score exceeded the expected score of 98. The cadets not from the tower became hysterical and could not believe the results. Li Ho realized that his comrade's strength was greater than that of the cadets. The exception to the rule was Oh Yun Nam, whose strength was 115, and he was considered the coolest hero by the cadets. At lunch, Kim Ta-yeon asked Li Ho why he had only hit 64, to which he replied that he didn't want to bother with useless things. But the real reason only he knew was that if he showed a leader's level, it would be difficult for him to get into the dungeon training to team up with Oh Yun Nam. At that moment, the second quest's assignment came. Now, they had 1 hour to rescue Oh Yun Nam somewhere in the waterfront park, and everyone wondered where to rescue him from. It turned out that after returning from the previous quest, Oh Yun Nam had beaten up some local hooligans, one of whom was Ha Pil. He was the son of the head of one of the strongest of the 10 Red Moon guilds, Park Young-suk, and he sent his best men to take out Oh Yun Nam. Realizing that there was not much time left, that Oh Yun Nam was in danger, and that he could not cope with such strong opponents, everyone rushed to save him. Meanwhile, Oh Yun Nam was already surrounded by Yoon Seok's men, who pinned him to the ground, saying how dare he offend their young master and that he was a scoundrel. When one of them suddenly felt a decisive blow to his chest, it was Sung Sung who wounded him with her firearm. Despite Ho's thinking that there was no need to hurry, all ran at the bandits. They began to defend themselves, not understanding how ordinary cadets had such a weapon. Although there were only 3 enemies, the difference in strength was great, so it was decided to attack them from behind the scenes. The fight was hard, and even though there were only 3 enemies, Li Ho and Oh Yun Nam decided to fight them shoulder to shoulder. Of course, the time was not right for chit-chat. Oh Yun Nam asked how they found him. Li Ho replied that he would explain everything to him after the situation was over. The enemies were powerful, and even the strong Kim Se-yeon could not overcome them. Still, he fell face down on the ground. One told the players and cadets that the academy protected them, so they didn't realize how scary the world was. Li Ho asked Song So-in to cover their rear while they could still hold off the enemy. She doesn't like orders, but she covers them. They were wounded in the team, and Li Ho ordered them to retreat to Che Yosol so that she could heal them and they could return to the battlefield again. When the fight became so difficult that they couldn't handle it, it was time to unleash the skills they'd learned from the books to win. Seeing that the cadets' forces are increasing, the enemy leader decided that they were talking nonsense about some quest and showed that they were not as simple as they thought. They swung their guns and suddenly, all around them, they were enveloped in flames. The players barely had time to cover themselves from the flames before they realized that the enemy was unrealistically strong. Even though the players have already become a team during this time, this enemy is beyond them. They form a trinity. They need to remove one of them, and they will weaken. Looking at the cadets' persistence, the enemy remarked that they were stubborn and would have made good hunters, but they had run out of time and would deal with them now. Che-is prevented the thugs from getting hurt in the first place, and thanks to her, their team was getting healthy again. But the co-commanders couldn't let that happen. They stood up for her and fought with her because she had helped and healed so many. During the battle, one enemy was wounded, breaking their formation. Then, a solid crack appeared in the iron door. But thanks to his abilities, Li Ho knew why they were in such an impatient hurry to finish them off. He told them that their head, Pak, must be furious. The villains did not understand how he knew about their leader, Park Young-suk, from the Red Moon. Li Ho said that because of their leader's intemperance, many of their people had already died. The villains could not stand such rudeness and attacked the cadets, but they were met with a worthy rebuff, and only one thug was left of this trio. The cadets decided to take pity on the thugs and not kill them, knowing that their chairman would not be happy with their appearance. Gathering his strength, one replied that he didn't care because today he saw the hunters who were the future of Korea, and he had no regrets. The quest was passed, and the cadets won this battle. The opponents wished them luck and vanished. The guys were very happy that, with their joint efforts, despite being close to death, they coped with the quest even 2 minutes faster. Yun-nam asked Lee Ho-Yun-nam if he knew what would happen to them today, to which he replied that it would be a good idea to start by thanking them for saving him. But it was hard for Yun-nam to be thankful, for he was proud of himself. Yet he thanked Lee Ho, who wished him to take care of himself. Because this regression is more complicated than the previous ones, Yun-nam asked if Lee Ho is also a regressor. Lee Ho said no, he's more than a regressor. When the cadets were gathered back in the classroom, the teacher began to form teams for tomorrow's tests in the dungeon. Everyone froze in anticipation. He announced that Yun-nam was expected to be the leader of the fourth team, which included Wu Chiho Shin Shin Sung Bumgo Yan Wu. To Lee Ho's delight, he's on his team too. He needs it to get the award but shouldn't get excited too soon. Lee Ho is approached by Yun-nam, who wants to talk to him. Yun-nam thinks that things are going to go wrong in the dungeon where they'll be training, and Lee Ho knows it too. He told him to tell Lee Ho what he knew. He said that in the novel's plot, Yun-nam will save only one of the three teams. Unfortunately, he doesn't know all the details and reasons why it's the way it is. He can't really know everything. Yun-nam grabbed him by the scruff of the neck and started yelling at him that something had to be done about it, even if it was a foregone conclusion. But Lee Ho didn't know what to do about it. In the midst of the scuffle, they were spotted by Seon So-young, and they certainly looked very ridiculous. The instructor gathered the team near the entrance to the dungeon, but the team still didn't know what they were preparing for. They entered the dungeon, where they were tasked with cleaning up the training dungeon and solving the problems of the underground disaster. Then, their leader, Yun-nam, suggested they split up and explore the dungeon. Communication was decided to keep on, and Lee Ho went down the empty corridor. Walking down the cold, dark corridor, he thought he knew that disasters would happen in 3 teams, the 4th being their team. He was sure they would be fine in the 9th team of Yosol and Seo-young. Yosol had the ability of a healer, and the tower would not let Seon Seo-young get hurt. He was most worried about the 12th team. Not only is Kim So-yeon Kim the leader, but they're also ahead. Suddenly, he encountered monsters resembling wolves with wild red eyes on the way. Lee Ho prepared to fight them, taking out his weapons. Lee Ho turned around and saw Ko Young-woo crying. He couldn't understand why he was crying and begging for forgiveness. After defeating the monsters, he turned to Yang. He asked if he still remembered blaming himself for the situation when they voted for him on the death mission. Without stopping to cry, he kept apologizing, and then Lee Ho said that if another situation like this happened, he would have to do the same. He also said that they could die at any moment, and Young-woo, with his soft character, should save his life first. They continued on their way together, Ko Young-woo praising Lee Ho for being cool and asking him how cool he was before the apocalypse. When he considered it, he answered that he had been in an orphanage and survived there. But when he grew up, he was just a poor office worker. The tower had significantly changed Lee Ho, but when he thought about it, he wondered who he was to teach and instruct anyone. His thoughts were interrupted by Ko Young-woo, who said that he didn't want to take care of himself, but wanted to help everyone despite the difficulties and dangers, just like Lee Ho. Smiling, Lee Ho stroked his head and agreed that the most important thing was the future and not to always look back. Suddenly, Young-woo approached the wall and felt as if something was going to come out of it. But Lee Hong's absolute sense was silent for some reason. Then he tried to sense something with his skill, and he asked Young-woo to move away. And he used his skill, and suddenly the wall shone brightly, almost blinding the guys. In the novel, the wall split and they fell into a labyrinth, but Yun-nam never said anything about the labyrinth. Suddenly, they met a strange creature on the way, Jemba Jemba. They were something like elves builders, and they were very surprised to see people. They were talking when suddenly one of them approached Lee Ho and started looking at his hands. He wanted to see who he was, because they were not characters in the novel. They turned out to be repairmen, patching up the holes in this novel. Lee Ho understood them very well because the novel was really not very good, and Jambov was very touched. At first, he wanted to raise Lee Ho to the ground, but realizing that he understood them, he said he would wipe their memories, which made Lee Ho very angry. He explained to Jambom that if he forgot the maze, he wouldn't be able to find the big plot hole. He asked them if they had found a way to patch it up. He was sure that no matter how bad a novel was, he'd always have something valuable to learn. But still, Jam thought that if he didn't leave things the way they were, the affair would stain his reputation, and it may be worth a try. Then Lee Ho proposed combining the 3 dungeons. that simultaneously fall into madness into one. The Jambas thought about it. But according to the pattern, if the dungeon grows, then the reward for its passage must grow, and this pattern cannot be broken. But the thing is, if Nam gets too big of an award, the plot will get confused, and Li Ho suggested that he might get the award. But you can't have a minor character stand out like that, and Jam just erased Li Ho's memory, so it was easier. Li Ho wakes up from being slapped on the cheeks by Young Woo because he's so worried that he thinks the elves are torturing him. But Jamba's elves didn't wipe his memory because there was no point he would be gone the next day. Not immediately, but Li Ho noticed some kind of hammer from Young Woo. It turned out that while the elves were busy with Li Ho, he stole it from them. It was a repairman elf's hammer of a unique class that repairs broken things and increases improvement, but it only lasts a day. Then Li Ho came to the leadership of the hidden mission. They needed to finish repairing the world of Roman to achieve the highest merit in it. What reward for this is not known. It turns out that Li Ho had a secret pact with the elves that led him to this assignment, but he had to act secretly to avoid causing plot holes. The dungeon began to get angry, and the monsters became stronger. The 3 dungeons were connected. Li Ho told Yowan to be on the lookout. They need to find Nam somewhere in the northeast. Yowoon is a researcher who can avoid the monsters and find them. The monsters have become much scarier and more dangerous than during the underground disaster, and some have started spitting poison. The cadets and players from the tower continued to fight the monsters together, but they were huge, evil, and poisonous. But even after hearing Nam's command, Li Ho couldn't help them in the open. He had to be in the shadows and clear the dungeon as quickly as possible. Smelling where the most acrid odor was coming from, he met a giant scorpion monster that turned out to be their king. Li Ho couldn't get to it when fighting the scorpion because it released an unrealistic amount of venom. He also thought that the 4th team had Nam and they could handle him, but he needed to deal with the rest of the dungeons. He needed it to reach the top, and he couldn't let this disaster happen. He fought the scorpion desperately. He thought that this scorpion was invincible, and Li Ho could not get through to defeat it lying on the cold ground. Then he decided to use the one-time reward he received when he completed Professor Shin Dong-hwan's side quest. It was the perfect shield that perfectly blocks absolutely any attack. Fighting with it would be easier. Thanks to the shield and the 3rd level of swordsmanship, Li Ho defeated the boss and passed the portal. However, the portal was still a dungeon, and Seo Young Li Ho was still worried about him. Surprised at himself for worrying about Seo Young, he moved to the dungeon, which was strangely empty. Suddenly something emerged from under the ground that turned out to be a horny, unpleasant mole. When suddenly from nowhere they became very many. They were very fast and agile, and Li Ho must be careful not to be killed by them. Suddenly he saw Seo Young and his team in the distance, but unfortunately the team was already exhausted. But Seo Young was as brave and strong as ever, crushing moles like little ants. He was exhausted when the mole attacked him from behind, but Li Ho came and pierced the mole like a kebab on a skewer. They were happy to see each other, but standing next to the lifeless bodies of Seo Young's team, they felt sorry for each other. Suddenly a huge mole appeared, so Young asked what it was. Li Ho answered him because he already knew that after the usual monsters, there was a boss. After the victory, they returned to the academy, where the head of the academy made a speech expressing their regret that some of the cadets did not return and promising to make up for it. The weather was also mourning the non-returnees. Li Ho couldn't accept that he couldn't save everyone, but Yoon supported him, saying that he did his best. Slipping Li Hong a handkerchief, he said that he was really more than a regressor, and that he would still sometimes ask him for advice. Wiping his face, Li Ho said that tomorrow's Li Ho would no longer be him because they were going back to the tower. He knew that they would climb to the top of the tower and create their happiest ending, so he and his team headed for the exit. Back in the lobby, they were pleased to have completed the mission, even though they felt older. The reward for the mission was items that were not in the store, but the difference in levels was different for everyone. Of course, Li Ho realized that his level was higher. He was expecting a first-place award for the hidden mission. But he was already happy to have gotten an item that added a subclass slot. He eagerly awaited the results of what subclass he would get. His thoughts were different. Shadow Savior, Master of Runes, or maybe God of Coins. Soon the result came, and he received the Beast Tamer subclass. Li Ho did not understand why this was because he expected something more remarkable. Then he remembered how, before the apocalypse, a little cat had followed him, but he couldn't take it. He had a huge money problem then, so he just ran away. He imagined he was an animal tamer, but it's not that bad. Animals are cute, and Lee Ho loves them. A new manual says there's a monster on the 7th floor that can be tamed and will be very useful. This time Lee Ho is looking forward to a new challenge because it will allow him to get a new useful pet. But there's a mission on the 6th floor called Infinite Struggle. The team continued to confront the monsters together, destroying them individually. Still, they turned out to be very many. The monsters were different, but the good thing about this mission is that they can get many experience points. It was strange, thought Lee Ho, because they didn't get any points at all on the 5th floor for the monsters. Lee Ho looked at his manual and saw that he was already at the 5th level, but it didn't matter because he had raised all his stats to the maximum. But until he overcomes the limit with training, he can't raise anything gold. He has to train hard now. When he heard the gunshots, he saw Song Seo-young. Her stats were increasing non-stop, and it seemed that the thugs had no limits on those stats. As rude as she is, she's helping Lee Ho feel it's time to tame the monster. For some reason, players in the Tower of the End of the World did not meet a single boss monster, but logically, they should be here. Suddenly, they noticed a new item in the store, a stone that changed the probability of amplification, which amplifies items by a certain amount. The players have maximized their abilities, and the new mission has begun with renewed vigor. With the ring, Nike Lee Ho realized that he could do a lot, but he had another mission waiting for him to strengthen, and he remembered the pet. Players bravely fought the monsters, but it was tough to find these reinforcement stones. Kim Yeon was the first lucky one to find the reinforcement stone. Of course, he was very happy. He is a self-confident narcissist who didn't doubt that he would find it. Time flew by insanely fast. Lee Ho was surprised that there were already less than 2 hours left. He had not yet found his pet and tamed it with his bare hands. In the intervening time, he has been able to meet the king bear. Yes, he is certainly cute, but very clumsy. Also met a wolf of level 18. He is big, strong, and fast, but has no stamina at all, unfortunately. I also encountered a strange two-headed cat. Yes, it's cool, of course, and it purrs soothingly, but these two heads confused it. The guide specified these 3 abilities, but Lee Ho did not realize it immediately. He was comforted by the fact that he found 3 stones of reinforcement, at least something. But if he doesn't find the pet, the 7th floor is meaningless to him. Suddenly, behind the bushes, he saw something surprising, so he decided to go look. As he got closer, he found an insanely strange creature, Kentao. It was a bizarre monster. Standing in front of him in a stand, Lee Ho looked at him and realized that he did not want such an ugly pet. However, Kentao Lee Ho did not like it either. And because of his strong steel spring leg muscles, he was also unrealistically fast. Comparing him to the cute kitten bears and badass wolves, he realized this Kentao was just the pet he sought. He managed to tame the pet and now has to choose a name for his new pet, so he decided to name it Kensu. He just thought that he could still pick out a cute pet, and that happened, and his powerful Kentucky suddenly became an adorable little baby. After completing the mission, the players returned to the lobby, where they saw Lee Hong's pet, Kensu, how they were smiling at his cuteness. Everyone wondered where he came from. Then Lee Ho explained that he had a new subclass called Animal Tamer, so he tamed Kentucky. Then Lee Ho asked his comrades if they had been able to improve their equipment. Seeing the lowered heads, he realized that the answer would be no. He had a premonition. And only Youngwoo embarrassedly revealed that his adventurer's backpack had become high level. Is when he stole the repairman elf's hammer. Thanks to it, according to the guide, he improved his backpack 3 times. Surprised, Che Yasol asked Lee Hong, didn't he improve anything? He boasted that his unique weapon now had a unique class. Everyone was pleased about his accomplishments. No one doubted he could do it. Still, Song So-young was unhappy because she had not obtained a single improvement stone. The foyer had a festive atmosphere. The players were in high spirits, but when suddenly the lights went out, the players tensed up. Kum appeared then and said he had prepared a show, but the players did not expect anything good from him. He asked the players if they had ever looked at others, envied their abilities, and wished they had such skills. This question made the players very wary and frightened. He gave the guys an event in which they had to ruin a player from another zone, and the winner would receive random abilities. They didn't know each other. Lee Ho thought that if these people were normal, they would find a way to get out of this situation without sacrificing anything. But Seo-young didn't want to point her gun at this. After the previous missions, Lee Ho had hoped she had become more human, but no, she was a thug. The players from the other zone tensed up when they saw Song Seo-young Che Kung-do's weapon pointed at them, thinking that fighting would be challenging. Kumkum wished them to have fun, and some players got a message that they did not come to all players. Everyone they came to tensed up. It said that within 10 seconds they had to go to another room. If they didn't, they'd die. The time passed quickly, but Lee Ho managed to run into the room where an earnest man was sitting. His name was Choi Kong-do from the commander's class. Something told me that the tower was trying to provoke the players and turn them against each other so that a fight would be inevitable. Kang-do walked over to the table, handed Lee Ho a glass of water, and said that he thought Lee Ho was a leader no matter what his level was, and that he didn't want team battles either. Listening to Lee Ho, he realized that he was not as simple as he seemed, but he spoke convincingly enough about the world. Choi-do said that he didn't want to lose any more of his comrades to the bloody plans of the damn tower. Listening to him, Lee Ho thought maybe he was just like him. He sincerely wants to protect his comrades, no longer wants to be a victim, and goes along with Badu. Then Choi-do offered to cooperate with them, but Lee Ho also wanted to. However, since they were in different locations, they didn't know how to communicate their intentions to the teams. Thinking Lee Ho, perhaps the only option to resolve the situation is to use that skill, but somehow, we need to pass this plan to the players. Choi-do then said that he had telepathy, and if he was sure that his guys wouldn't be attacked, he would telepathically tell them not to attack. Of course, Lee Ho was surprised that he opened up to him, but if they wanted to complete the mission without casualties, there was no other choice. Lee Ho's group was generally peaceful and had no desire to attack, but he explained to Choi-do that he could not control one member of the group. Of course, it was Seon Seo-young, but Lee Ho gave his word that if she starts making trouble, he'll stop her. While Choi-do trusted him and agreed. Plugging in his abilities, he began relaying information to the players on his team. After successfully negotiating with the other leader, he went to the next room, which was empty, but he needed to find Seon So-young. Remembering that when he passed the mission on the 7th floor, the amount of his gold was over 50,000, he bought a random box. It was time to open it. A map in the box allowed you to see the location, and the players turned out to be a 5-story hotel. Looking into it, Lee Ho was reassured that all was well. When he looked at the map, he saw that Song Seo-young was on the 5th floor. For some reason, she wasn't there alone, but with Kim Seo-young. When he saw them, he saw Kim So-young on the floor, lying lifeless on the body of the guy from the second team. Lee Ho threw himself at him and shouted at him that he was a scoundrel for doing this. He had spent so much time and energy negotiating so that no one would die on this mission. However, Kim So-young didn't know about the negotiations and explained to Lee Ho that this guy had attacked him first and that he had to defend himself. Suddenly, Lee Ho received a message saying that murderers have eyes with which they can see how many people another person has killed. Then he realized Song Song assassin, and when she pointed her gun at Choi-do, she just saw the amount of his evil deeds and how many people he had killed. Then Lee Ho decided to meet with him to find out. He told him to stop pretending to be white and fluffy, and he'd realize his rotten nature. He told Lee Hong that he liked his ability, and was thinking of taking his life and getting it for himself. Then Lee Ho asked why he made his team do evil and not sent people to the other world himself, as that would have given him more power. He replied to Lee Hong that when his army gets stronger, he gets stronger. He was getting so strong that he laughed in Lee Ho's face and told him he would never defeat him and his army alone. After fighting, Lee Ho realized the opponent was strong and had long iron claws. Plus, he wasn't alone with his warriors. Then Lee Ho called his pet, Ken, laughing. Choi-do said the two of them couldn't handle it. However, Lee Ho was confident, and his pet Ken was powerful with paws and tails. Using counterattacks and their full power, they took out the army of Choi-do's 6. Surprised at how easily they had dealt with his guys, Choi-do asked why Lee Ho had left all the guys alive. He couldn't survive in the tower with such gentleness. This villain was like a pawn controlling the men. Clearly the fight wasn't over. He wouldn't give up so easily. His warriors seemed to revive and with renewed vigor entered a new battle, not an easy, hard fight. Lee Ho suddenly realized it was not healing these guys, but Choi-do lifted them up using all their life force. He was also proud of himself and said to Choi-do that warriors have all their abilities in this state and become twice as powerful. This really pissed Lee Ho off, and he started yelling that he would ruin the guys. You can't treat your comrades like this. They're not expendable. But Choi-do didn't like it, so he started making excuses that his life was more important than theirs, and that since Lee Ho was here, he had sinned too. Yes, he said, I'm not a saint, and I don't consider myself a hero, But if there is a chance to save a person, I will do it because I am a man with a heart and soul. But in this situation, he'll have to follow his heart, not his head. He realized he had no choice but to stay cold-blooded. If he didn't deal with them now, his close comrades would be in danger. Taking their special weapons, Lee Ho and his loyal pet, Ken Young, went into battle. It was brutal, but they had to do it to save their comrades. After dealing with the pawns, they dealt with Choi Do. He was unhappy that he met with Lee Ho and confessed that his comrades were pawns to him. But no matter how much he repents that he's wrong, rules are rules, and according to them, Lee Ho is the winner, and part of Choi Do's powers go to him. The mission was completed because most of the players in Area C-1520 did not survive, but Lee Ho's team seemed to have all returned. They were resting after the fight, happy to be alive. Some barely made it through, and some of their opponents just disappeared. When Seo Sung was sitting on the sidelines, Lee Ho approached her and apologized for the misunderstanding. Still, she was unapproachable and said that it wasn't for their sake that she did it. Looking at her, Lee Ho wondered why she seemed so villainous if she wasn't like her by nature, or if something had happened to her. Their attention was drawn to a loudspeaker saying that the mission was complete and that they would soon embark on a mission on the 8th floor, but things were moving fast. Of course, both Lee Ho and all the players realized that the 8th floor would have special challenges. He noticed that his stats had increased. He remembered his words about humanity and realized he didn't have the right to say such things yet. He still had to work on pure skill. Announced the beginning of a new mission. It is called the Hall of Upgrade Qualification, and players who have passed so many tests were ready for everything. The screen appeared, but on it was not the usual Kum, but the middle manager of the tower, and his name was Kim. Strange, thought the players. The mission will be in the Zone 456 Skill Renewal Room, where the gladiators gather. Only those who have renewed their qualifications will be able to reach the next floor. Those who can't will die, and he announced Phase 1. The rules require them to form a 4-man patty to hunt the Jagam mammoths. Whoever loses dies, and the hunt takes 2 hours to complete. But something didn't add up. Lee Ho calculated that 36 people were just enough for 5 packs, but the monsters were only 8. Players are worried that the number of patty and monsters does not match what will happen to patty, which is superfluous. Kimim replied that it's not their game, but since it's just the first phase, he'll be kind and add another condition. The stipulation stated that the death of one player in the portal equated to a Jagam mammoth hunt. Still, the players didn't understand how this would even play out. A portal opened, but the players panicked and tried to gather the party as quickly as possible. When some strange guy came out and asked if there were any murderers present. It was the killer, Han Gang-hyuk, but it wasn't clear why the killer was looking for others like him. It was strange. Lee Hoon's party was formed, and the murderer, Gang-hyuk, was in it, but it was good for him to know what he was and what he was up to. Looking at Lee Ho's guide, I read that there is a hidden object in the northeastern part. The leader of Jagam mammoths is locked inside the barrier, but Lee Ho had a mini-map. Opening it, he saw that the red dots were regular Jagamas, and the golden one was a hidden facility where the leader was. Lee Ho thought they'd have to try hard to catch him, and no one would die. Advancing, they met a giant mammoth with red eyes and huge tusks. After all, Lee Ho found the leader of the jaguar mammoths. New players were surprised he could do so at such a trim level. But Seo Dong-ho started praising him for how cool he was despite his level. To someone who knew him, he was a god. Gang-hyuk didn't stop looking at me with a stare that gave me goosebumps. It wasn't good to be in the crosshairs of his gaze. Now they have to somehow remove the barrier from Jagam, but he's not affected by any of the attacks, not even a scratch. He's firm. Then Lee Ho took out a guide and read that according to the instructions, the barrier would open automatically after they killed 5 ordinary mammoth Jagamas. But he knew that the leadership would not give them an impossible task. Looking at the map, he saw that 4 mammoths had already died. Suddenly, Lee Ho noticed that Gang-hyuk had easily separated the head of a female team member for no reason, which shocked the remaining members. Naturally, Lee Ho was furious and shouted at him because it was such an incomprehensible and stupid act. But Gang-hyuk stood there, as if nothing had happened, smiling and answering that it was a precaution in case the barrier didn't open. Even Seo Jun-ho was freaked out by his action because you can't kill people for insurance. He said he was sorry Gang-hyuk was on their team. Then Lee Ho took the weapon in his hands and said that it was partly his fault. He had let his guard down, even though he knew that he was a thug and that no good could come from him. The thug replied that he could kill all of them, and then he could only take the reward for himself. but that was not the answer you would expect from a thug. Unfortunately, their party is not friendly at all, and with such an attitude, passing the mission will be more difficult because they are already fighting with each other. This crazy thug couldn't stop trying to kill everyone in their party. Lee Ho told Seo Jun-hun to retreat now. But he wouldn't back down and leave his comrade fighting thug Gang Hyuk and receive a decisive blow from him in the chest. It was a powerful blow. Lee Ho blamed himself and didn't understand why he needed all these achievements if they didn't help him save a single comrade. That rascal Guy Hyuk didn't feel the slightest bit of guilt. He was mocking Lee Hong's feelings and was just about to teach him a lesson when suddenly they noticed something. It turned out to be a barrier that opened with a massive explosion. To save Seo Jun, he loaded him on his shoulder and carried him under a big tree. Luckily, he was still breathing, so there was a chance. Watching the thug, Gang Hyuk Lee, Ho realizes that he's a strong opponent, which partly makes him even more pleasant to fight. His weapons are unique. His weapon, Aura Blade, a unique weapon aura, moves separately from the blade. One cannot guess where the aura will fly, and it impressively shows his exclusive skill as a soul killer. Of course, Lee Ho wanted to deal with this scoundrel, but he realized that he was weaker than him at the moment. It was more important to deal with the leader of the mammoths. The battle continued. The dark leader of the mammoths was strong, but together they managed to defeat him and get the reward for clearing the hidden object. Of course, Gang Hyuk was happy that they were able to defeat him. He said that even though he didn't find the killer, he managed to find something interesting. Lee Ho asked Gang Hyuk why he was looking for a murderer, and he asked if he knew any. Everyone returned to their original position. They were all very happy to see Seo Jun thank Lee Ho for saving him. He was genuinely happy that he had been able to save him. I remember Lee Ho's conversation with Gang Hyuk as he laughed, calling him funny for saying that he knows the killer and it's himself. Then Lee Ho told him he would tell him who the killer was, but in return, he wanted answers to his questions after thinking Gang Hyuk agreed. Then Lee Ho continued, saying that there was a killer in his location, but he was special. He somehow got an exclusive firearm. He asked if this man was the king of the murderers, and Gang Hyuk was surprised to hear that such a thing existed. Of course, Lee Ho didn't know if there was a king of murderers, but it was not a bad idea to look into his eyes. Gang Hyuk asked who the murderer was. He gave Gang Hyuk the fictitious information, and now it was his turn to ask why he was looking for the killer and what the purpose of it all was. His shoulder was still sore from this conversation. However, he had learned much-needed information that on the Day of Blood, the characteristics of the murderers would blossom, and there would be carnage. They must team up now that Gun Hyuk knows Blood Day is coming up. Since the day he was designated as Sung Seo-young's primary target, that Day of Blood just won't leave his mind. Judging by the guide, if on the Day of Blood a murderer takes someone's life, he'll get huge rewards for it. What wildness thought Lee Ho of them officially for them to destroy people allocated time to wait for this day is very difficult. He wondered if Seon So-yeon agreed and what the nature of those murderers really was. He understood Gang Hyuk's nefarious plans and decided to do whatever it took to deal with the scoundrel on this floor and stop him from causing trouble. Kim Kim suddenly appeared, startling the audience and asking who was the guy who had found the hidden mammoth. Shocking all the players by saying that thanks to the one who killed the hidden monster, too many people survived to volunteer for the murderers. He said that at least 4 players had to die. I asked him if a certain number of players had to die on each floor. And if the 4 men don't die, they won't go any further, to which Kim Kim replied yes, and that he could take them out by accident. But it's boring for him. He also said that the murderer would receive a special reward for his death, advising him to sacrifice the weakest and most available player. One player decided to talk to Kim Kim, saying that he just wanted to watch them face off against each other and take each other's lives. Lee Ho players tried to stop it. According to the guide, you cannot provoke Kim Kim. The player did not listen, thinking that he was behind the screen. His task was only to give tasks. Of course, Kim Kim did not tolerate such an attitude to himself and severely punished the player who misbehaved towards him. He explained to the rest of the players that even though he was behind the screen, he would reach everyone, and logic didn't work in the Tower of Doom. Getting angry with all the players, he asked them if they would destroy each other or if they preferred to die by his hand. The players were very frightened, trusting Lee Ho. They asked him what they should do. It was clear that Kim Kim was serious. Lee Ho understood this too. Then Lee Ho and Han Gang Hyuk volunteered for the mission. Lee Ho realized that this was his chance to finally take down this thug once and for all. Then a special mission was launched. Gang Hyuk wryly said that he didn't want to ruin him. He was surprised that Lee Ho chose him as a rival. Gang Hyuk was confident of his victory, thinking that Lee Ho was no match for him. Lee Ho said that strength is not measured by the number of people killed. Gang Hyuk wondered what he knew about the eyes of the murderer. Lee Ho said that in the tower, there are many ways to become stronger, not only him. The battle of the two gladiators was started. When Lee Ho crossed his arms, he realized that Gang Hyuk was many times more powerful than him. Despite having a unique and rare weapon, Lee Ho had difficulty handling it. His deadly blows were somehow connected to the eyes of a killer. Outnumbered, Gang Hyuk taunted him, saying he was verbose and expected a much fairer fight from Lee Ho. Of course, Lee Ho realized that his strength was not enough to defeat the enemy, but he knew he was not alone and had a pet. Unable to do it alone, he called on his trusty sidekick Kensu's pet. And Kensu entered the fight, delivering blow after blow. Gang Hyuk wondered what kind of strong kangaroo he was and where he came from. Now that the two outnumbered Gang Hyuk, he began complaining that it wasn't fair to call for help. Lee Ho smiled and asked him if he had chickened out and couldn't handle the two of them. He replied that for him, it does not matter the number of opponents. He will send to the other world without exception. The fight was brutal. Gang Hyuk had an unrealistically powerful aura blade. Still, Lee Ho remembered that he had noticed its only weakness during the mammoth hunting mission. After Kensu's attack, he would use his abilities to their full potential, but his mana would be used quickly. The difficulty was that it was impossible to predict his blows. Lee Ho has absolute instincts and uses them to dodge the blows. He decided to hold out as long as possible while Gang Hyuk used mana. Then he'll save the skill he used against him, and they'll win. The fight continued, but Lee Ho could not strike him with a powerful blow because of his aura blades. He used them a lot without letting him get close to him. But thanks to Kensu, their chance of victory has increased because he's a very strong, fast, agile kangaroo. And thanks to him, they are still holding on. There came a point when his mana was practically zero. He was much weaker and more vulnerable to their blows. At that moment, they decided to jointly attack Gang Hyuk while his strength ran low. But Jen Hyuk didn't want to give up and wasn't used to winning. At that moment, Jen Hyuk gathered the remaining mana and delivered a crushing blow, which Kensu took with a blow that separated his hands. Kneeling before the limb, Lee Ho didn't realize whether his pet was alive. Gang Hyuk said he fought well but didn't rely on himself, only on his pet. He said he was kneeling before him, but Lee Ho got angry and said Kensu was not just a pet. Gang Hyuk replied that people are fools to get attached to someone and call them a friend, and then when they lose that person they get attached to, they get hurt. Lee Ho replied that what makes people human is a peaceful life in which they have fun and friendship if the fight is shoulder to shoulder and not the evil that radiates. He also said that Gang Hyuk chose the wrong path of evil, which would inevitably lead him to loneliness, which Ga Hyuk disagreed with. The angry Gang Hyuk didn't want to continue the conversation, wondering if Lee Ho clung to his humanity even before his demise. After the fight, he did not stop pissing off Lee Ho, saying that he could not do anything without the pet, and that he was like a cockroach crushed Kensu. Lee Ho replied that he was not dependent on the pet. Thanks to it, he was still alive and could deplete its mana to zero, which would make it easier for him to win. That made Gang Hyuk very angry, and he jumped up, bringing his blade over Lee Hong's head and telling him to go to the next world as quickly as possible. But he was able to dodge Gang Hyun's blade. He applied the level of a medium swordsman, saying it was his turn to strike. At the last moment, when Lee Ho had no chance of winning, he suddenly discovered a new ability that even Gang Hyun was shocked by. Looking at the manual, Lee Ho saw that his swordsmanship level had increased to the second medium level, and he could now release. The release power was impressively high, and because it came at the very last moment, he could send Gang Hyun to the other side. He stood and remembered his pet, how powerful he was, and how strong he was. He mentally apologized to him and thanked him for his service. At that moment, he received a message saying the dead animal could be summoned again in 24 hours. While rejoicing that his pet would be revived, Kim Kim appeared on the screen, said he liked obedient people very much, and congratulated Lee Ho on his victory. He also said that since the murderer had died, the missions on the floors would be much more difficult. Lee Ho could not understand what he was saying and what he wanted to say. Then Kim Kim explained that the Soul Crafters are not just the strongest tower elite, but also part of the mission complexity school. Then Lee Ho realized the more they send the murderers to the other side, the harder it will be to get back up. But if they are not stopped, there will be a great catastrophe. Because he did well, he was sent on a second mission with a special reward. He went to some familiar place that reminded him of a comic book where some old man was sleeping. When he looked at the mission manual, he found it vague. He needs to succeed in training. If he fails, he's dead. But it's nice not to have to compete with anyone. Kim Kim added that he would receive a special reward since he had earned the demon's demon death achievement. Warily approaching the sleeping old man, Lee Ho asked him who he was, mentally wondering if he was his special reward. Stretching after his sleep, the old man said he was a heavenly demon and would be his master and train him. Lee Ho thought it was the master from the webtoons of martial arts, but the old man was not like the canon. He looked more like a Shulin master. Suddenly, the master knocked Lee Ho on the head, causing him to get a lump. He said that Lee Ho got a lump because he had impure thoughts. Holding his head, Lee Ho wondered if he could read his mind, but this blow was obvious. He didn't have time to react. The master prepared the stick to strike and told Lee Hong that he would repeat the strike and needed to concentrate and block his strike this time. With his absolute sense, Lee Ho was sure that this time he would not screw up because the first blow was unexpected, and he already knew about the second one. He shouldn't have been so confident because he couldn't block the second blow, and he got hit in the head again, so he sat down from the pain. The master told him the problem was that he could increase his perception, but it wouldn't do any good because his body didn't have time to react. How could it be that his agility had reached its maximum? The master said it was not a matter of whether he was fast or slow and ordered Lee Hong to attack him. He said to take his best weapon, and into the fight, Lee Ho agreed. He just had to let go of the idea that he was an old man after all. But he didn't know what to expect from the wizard, because even in his status window, there was no information about him. He really was an unreadable monster. After beginning his training with Master Lee Ho, he decided that he would activate his second-level swordsmanship ability and be able to show that he was capable of something. After starting the fight, Lee Ho realized that the old man was a worthy opponent. He was much stronger than it seemed, and he decided that he had something to learn. The old man said that his skill and ability were negligible, and no matter how much he swung his sword, it was just trash and kindergarten. Of course, Lee Ho didn't agree with this because he thought his skill was that of an average swordsman and not just a magical ability. The master also said that for him to be able to transfer his fighting abilities to him, it was first necessary to remove the magical techniques from his body. Of course, Lee Ho did not agree with the master taking away his abilities because they are the basis of the tower system. Still, the old man said he did not care about it. He was against it. Without his powers, he wouldn't live to see it. The old man said if he didn't reach a certain level of success, he'd die. The time in the hourglass continued to dwindle mercilessly, and Lee Ho did not understand how he would quickly go through everything from scratch. He's just an average swordsman, to which the master said the wisdom that the smaller the vessel, the more fixated it is on its contents. Thinking it was all he had, he said he wouldn't talk him down, and that it was up to him to live like a frog in a vessel or accept his training. He added that many people would give their lives for a crumb of his knowledge, and he is such a fool to pass up such a chance. Or thinking that he knew a fight based on skill and stats alone could not be eternal. After weighing the pros and cons, Lee Ho agreed that from now on, as his apprentice, he would heed his words and do whatever he ordered. He felt that he had restored all his previous levels after removing his skills. He didn't know how long his teachings had lasted, 2 or 3 days, but after the death of his doppelganger, he had become even stronger. But even before the clock has half the sand left, he will surpass his achievements, thought Lee Ho at the time. The master praised him for surpassing the previous version of himself. Lee Ho bowed and thanked him for his teachings, because thanks to him, he was able to achieve this. The master laughed and said he was still low, but it was to keep Lee Ho relaxed, but he didn't really think so. The master thought that Lee Ho still had great potential and that he could possess good qualities with intensive training. Frowning, he told Lee Ho that they were now officially apprentices and masters and that he needed to show more respect and always worship his master. He knocked him on the head again for disobedience, but Lee Ho asked the master in surprise if they had not been master and apprentice before. The master asked Lee Ho not to call someone just because he was taught to walk. Lee Ho did not understand what the master meant. Master explained that from now on, he would train him to wield the sword he had refined, based on the heavenly demon's unique technique. It is one of the greatest swordsmanship of all time, called the Shadowless Ghost Sword. The master said that by the age of 29, he had already possessed 7 branches of Chanma, for which he was hailed as the greatest genius in the world of martial arts. Then he ascended to the throne of the celestial Chanma and people said of him that the greatest Chanma of all ages had appeared. And so he devoted his life to the art of the sword, achieved union with the blade, and ascended to be in this tower. He was treated harshly, however. He also said that only when he was in the tower did he realize that his journey was not yet complete. This surprised Li Ho, as it turned out that the master was also a hostage of the tower. He replied that he had an agreement with the tower. He just played a certain role and was not tied to it. At any moment, he could leave. Li Ho wondered if the teacher was to be believed, everyone in the tower was a player NPC, but the teacher was clearly not a player. The teacher said that, by arrangement with the tower, he could not tell him everything, but he assured him he would master the art of the sword that haunts the soul without shadow. Bowing to the teacher, Li Ho said he understood everything and would try to learn all the skills. The teacher resented why he reacted so dryly to this art, for if he had been a disciple of another cult, he would have been jumping for joy. Li Ho replied that there was no time for sentimentality, and now every second counts to master such a technique, which he had heard about for the first time. The teacher agreed with him but warned him that from now on, teaching would be difficult, and he would have to train very hard and be ready for anything. Even though Li Ho had removed the sword skill from his status, he realized that restoring the previous level was not that difficult. He just had to follow the old path. However, this Muyang Chuying technique, although it was calm but effective and soft but powerful, was very difficult for Li Ho to master. The teacher replied that he had been learning this technique all his life, even though he was the greatest martial artist in the world. Li Ho said that he felt that after he started learning this technique, his sword skills were deteriorating. The teacher thoughtfully suggested that Li Ho test his skills and what he had learned during this time fighting with him. An interesting proposal. Li Ho realized that he had barely defeated his doppelganger. He had become weaker than he was before. How could he fight the teacher himself? After hesitating, he decided the teacher was right because time was running out, and there was no more time to wait, so they clashed in battle. The teacher showed an unreal skill, moving like a ghost that made it difficult for Li Ho to catch it. Was simply impossible. This time, he noticed that the teacher was about to strike, and he had a strategy to block and attack, but for some reason, he failed again. He did not understand why he had failed, for he had foreseen everything the teacher had asked if he had counted on his instincts to prevent his sword. Telling him that you can't anticipate his punches, he hits either ski lunges or changes the point of impact at the last moment to fool his instincts. The teacher continued to strike, but whether he realized what he was doing, there was not much time left. Li Ho wondered if he should continue. Li Ho's mind was spinning, thinking about what would happen if the clock ran out of time and he didn't have time to master the technique. The teacher replied that he should not be so impatient, that he should throw away everything he had been leaning on before and feel the texture. The teacher explained that everything in the world, tangible or intangible, has a texture. He needs to learn to sense it. If Li Ho could feel it, he could cut through anything. Then Li Ho tuned in because the Muyang Chuhang technique sword, which pursues the soul without a shadow, can cut through even non-material things. He remembered the teacher's attack that he had foreseen but could not prevent because he could not feel the texture. Then the teacher ordered him to focus and concentrate, saying that Li Ho would immediately attack him. Gathering all the skills and knowledge his teacher had taught him over the days, he went into battle with him. He could repel the teacher's blow. Now he understood the word. Stalking the soul without a shadow, the teacher realized that he could teach him something. The teacher was pleased that Li finally began to understand the technique. Li said that in the moment of reflection on the attack, he learned the true depth of the master's teachings. Although Li Ho tried to follow the sword's path, clearly drawing his path, the teacher said that not every student could see the true essence of the technique. The teacher also instructed him that the sword's secret, which pursues the soul without a shadow, lies not in filling but in emptying, and Li Ho should remember that. He also added that he would be able to learn authentic swordsmanship only when he reaches the limit, putting aside all unnecessary Li Ho thoughts about the teacher's words. He realized that a variety of techniques would benefit him more, and that if he had sought out the best techniques, he would never have achieved mastery by comparing them. No hairstyle compares to the glow of a bald spot. The teacher didn't like that comparison and banged him on the head again. Like a true disciple, he bowed to his teacher, thanking him for his instruction, and saying that he would not forget his words, and would surely reach the top of the tower. The teacher was touched and gave Li Ho a beautiful costume because a student of the heavenly chroma should not wear anything like a homeless person. Of course, Li Ho was very grateful to the teacher for his gift and said goodbye to him, saying they would meet again on the way to the top of the tower. After parting with his teacher, he was transported to an unknown place. But what was this place? He thought he was supposed to return to the gladiator's waiting room. Suddenly, in the dark corner of the room, he saw someone. Lee Ho tensed up, but the Kim Kim he saw on the screen turned out to be his room. Lee Ho didn't understand why he was there. He asked Kim Kim that question and said he had a proposition for Lee Ho. He continued, handing Lee Ho a glass and suggesting that Lee Ho take the place of the murderer Honey Gang, whom he had sent to the world for his atrocities. After thinking carefully about his offer, Lee Ho asked if he could refuse it because he didn't want to become a murderer and kill people for rewards. After thinking, Kim Kim replied that he had no right to force him, but if he refused, he might get angry, and there was no telling what he would do in that state. Of course, Lee Ho knew he didn't like to be disregarded, but he couldn't force it. He could only threaten it. He tensed up when he thought about it, whether he agreed or not. Because if he agreed, everything he had created would come to nothing, and he would have to break through by force, which he didn't want to do. Then he got the manual to finish the gladiator mission, go back to the 8th floor, and start the trainer mission. He realized that the tower could do more than that. If he returned to the mission's beginning, Gang Hyuk would be alive again. But what did that mean? After thinking it over, Lee Ho took Kim Kim's glass, drank the filling, and said he agreed to his proposal. In that instant, Lee Ho became a soul killer. His vitals, life magic power, stamina, strength, and agility instantly increased many times over. Looking at the manual, he saw that his swordsmanship skill had a blade aura overlaid on it, but because his teacher had removed it, he didn't understand it. Then came the notification that it was impossible to impose the aura of the blade, but in return, Lee Ho was given an alternative weapon and skills. Lee Ho felt a new strength in his hands. After that, he was returned to the rest of the players. Chunho was insanely excited about his return and praised his unrealistic speed. He stood in front of them in his beautiful new clothes, and Chunho noticed that some sort of majestic aura had begun to emanate from Lee Ho. Heavenly Chanma was gifted with a unique rank of clothing that repairs itself after being damaged. He doesn't need to buy armor after every mission. But when he looked at the players, he was surprised that so few people were left alive, which was unfortunate because he had even become friends with many of them. A satisfied Kim Kim appeared on the screen and said the last mission would be the most difficult. Here, the players were surrounded by monsters. Their mission was to kill the Iron Lion in case of victory status upgrade. If not, they would die. This arena was considered the graveyard of gladiators, where their last mission would take place. The players realized that each of these lions had such mammoth-like strength, and the 4 had barely defeated him. For some reason, the swordsman player Sha Jem was a bit ill at ease with the battle. Iron lions were impressively strong with powerful fangs, sharp, huge paws, and claws. Rushing into the battle, Sha Jem shouted as if there was no way, but he would not give up until his last breath, and went boldly into battle on the lion. When suddenly, one lion was scared off by a powerful weapon. At first, everyone wondered where the blow came from, but as it turned out, Lee Ho's weapon, which he had obtained by becoming a murderer, was even more pleasant to wield than he thought because it was so powerful. Suddenly, he began to receive strange notifications of gladiator status updates, and he could not return to the lobby. He was thrown back to the 8th floor. He got to the beginning of the mission on the 8th floor, and the qualification resumption phase began there. Looking around, Lee Ho realized that he was back in the trainer's waiting room. He was actually back here again. First, he decided to check his status, as he expected the killer's characteristics to disappear because Gang Hyuk had taken over again. When he looked in the inventory folder, he was surprised because everything was unchanged. However, without the sniper skill, it was useless, so he decided to leave it all. But now, he could mentally send a message to 5 people, and he decided to warn his comrades Seo Junho and Han Gang Hyuk because he was going through the ring alone. Seo Jun heard his message, mistaking it for God's voice, but most importantly, he will survive this gladiator mission. Next, Lee Ho decided to summon his favorite pet, Ken Su, whom he had lost in the fight against Gang Hyuk. Their meeting was very tender and long-awaited. They missed each other very much and hugged, happy to see each other. Suddenly, Ken Su told Lee Hong to move away. Suddenly, there was a strange, unpleasant man behind him. He was admiring Ken Su and how cute he was still alive. But where did this man come from? Suddenly, this man with his huge 3-headed dog grinned and hissed, "Ken Su wants to be lunch for his beautiful Kelway." They were distracted by Kim Kim appearing on the screen. He greeted them, reminded them that he hated being ignored, and advised everyone to listen to him now. But Lee Ho didn't want to listen to anyone else. He was angry at that unpleasant man who dared treat his favorite Kensu as food. Then Kim Kim went on to explain the details of the mission. It said that one must win the Battle of the Pets. The victory renews the trainer's qualification. Players remain in the game if you lose the mission at the second level, even if you don't die while completing the mission. Looking at the screen and listening to Kim Kim, Lee Ho agreed that in principle, the rules are loyal since only 4 players are on the mission. As fate would have it, Lee Ho and Kensu had to contend with that unpleasant man and his pet 2-headed giant dog. He saw that little baby kangaroo transformed into a vast, muscular kangaroo who told him he wouldn't let him hurt them anymore. This guy realized he wasn't just a pet and said it was even more interesting. Then he sicked his huge Kelway on Kensu, calling him a treat again. And the Battle of the Pets has begun. Indeed, this 2-headed monster has proven to be powerful and will not be easy to defeat. Yes, Lee Ho has Kelway's considerable speed, strength, and unpredictable attacks due to the fact that he has 2 heads, but there is one thing. Suddenly, he stopped attacking Kensu and Lee Ho, even though his master had given him commands to attack them. That's the trainer's weakness. Then Lee Ho looked at his characteristics. He turned out to be a bloodthirsty dog, but his combat characteristics were very weak. Il Ho just didn't develop him. Because the master's combat power is below average and the pet must protect the master, it has a limited combat range. After reading and understanding all this information, Lee Ho realized why there were so few trainers. He said, "Then Kensu, let's show them who is the winner here." And their battle began. Lee Ho and Kensu were in this battle. They trusted each other entirely and surpassed their opponents. An exhausted and angry Il Ho didn't understand why an ordinary tamer was so good with weapons. He kept yelling for Kelva to tear them apart. But Lee Ho and Kensu had their own plan. They began to dash around Kelway, robbing him of his coordination and stability. Because Lee Ho realized his mistake before, he was focusing on his attack, so he and Kensu acted out of character. Now he's feeling him completely. He feels not only his pet, but also that Kensu's strike and his sword create the perfect battle path. Clearly, this mission will be a new opportunity for Lee Ho. After he had obtained his weapon through the mission, he was sure that he and Kensu would be the best partners even after this mission. They successfully and honorably won this fight. He passed the renewal of his trainer qualification and was returned to the lobby. The players were happy that they had survived the mission. They cheered and greeted each other, congratulating each other on completing the mission. The guys thanked Lee Ho for saving them. Kim Se-young said it was like hearing the voice of God. They didn't know Lee Ho had telepathic powers. But Chae-sul said she resented him for not using his powers on her, and he promised to use them on her next time. While looking at the happy kids, Lee Ho noticed Xian So-young in the crowd, but she was upset about something. Looking at the guys, he could see that not all the players had returned, but those who had returned desperately tried to look happy while hiding their grief. At that moment, Seo-ju came up to him and asked him about the murderers who they were. All the players, especially Lee Ho and Xian So-yeon, were stunned by this question. Lee Ho thought about it because now he knew a lot about who the murderers were and how dangerous Gang Hyuk was, something Xian So-young didn't know. Suddenly, Song Seo-young wondered if he might be right if the murderers were needed to control the difficulty levels in the tower. Again spoke from the loudspeaker, saying that they had an hour left before the new mission, and that they had better continue to train intensively in preparation for it. Everyone continued to train Lee Ho because he realized he could not ignore the shadowless soul-hunting technique training. After all, it was so difficult. Sung So-young suddenly approached him and said she wanted to talk to him. He knew that on the 9th floor there would be a vote on Blood Day. If there were many positive votes, Blood Day would be on the 10th floor. He realized that when his and Song Song's realm teamed up, she couldn't use her weapons to their fullest, and she would most likely cast a vote for the Day of Blood. However, Lee Ho has a card up his sleeve and needs to use it to make Xian So-yeon change her mind and question her decision. Then he asked her what she wanted him to do. Was she going to tell him she was a soul killer? She pretended she didn't know what he meant. With a smile, Lee Ho told her that there was no point in her hiding her identity because he was also a murderer. Then Song So-young realized how he had so many powers and told him he wasn't a killer, to which he asked if it was because he had killed so few people. She wanted to test him, on which he said he didn't trust the eyes of a soul killer, and she realized then that he was really a soul killer and not pretending to be one. She asked him how he knew she was a soul killer because the only way to find out is to count how many people she sent to the afterlife. Lee Ho replied that he saw everything and knew everything about her, including her characteristics, the amount of gold she had in her class, and her skills. But she didn't believe him and pointed a gun at him and said he couldn't have that ability to see everything and everyone, and that he was a liar. But he wasn't afraid of her weapons. He proved the opposite by saying that she had 350 units of mana, but only 51 stamina. Adding that with that much mana, she could use any weapon, and her strength had increased by 3 points. He wanted to go on about dexterity. But Song So-young shouted at him that she understood everything, and that it was good that she believed him to stop reading her like an open book. Because if she thinks he's a murderer too, she won't vote for the Day of Blood because she can't ruin him now. There's a hefty fine for that. Then Sung Sun asked if she could ask one last question to Lee Ho, wondering what kind of question it would be about why he had killed so few people. Or maybe she'll ask what choice the ninth floor would make based on the fact that he's also a murderer. He gave her the go-ahead for the last question because he believed that no matter what she asked, the answer would be favorable to him. Then Song Seo-yeon asked him if he was a great murderer, which confused Lee Ho because he didn't know what that meant. Their conversation and the players' training were interrupted by a loudspeaker voice announcing that the break was over and it was time for the mission on the ninth floor. In the blink of an eye, Lee Ho found himself in an old cemetery. An extraordinary place, he thought. Looking around, Lee Ho didn't see any other players, so it looked like this was once again an individual mission, and he would be going through it alone. When he suddenly saw a glow, a nun appeared before him, saying that he had grown very much. It turned out that this mission was called the Head of the Dead. The guide said that dead loved ones would rise and appear before them, and they need not lose their heads. But as he could not believe it, that nun turned out to be. It was the headmistress of his school, and he plunged sharply into memories of an unpleasant situation he had been in his school days. When a classmate accused him of stealing his wallet, he even found a witness who he coaxed into threatening him. He was Jo Jae-hun, who accused Lee Ho of stealing and called him a beggar. Lee Ho knew he did it because he was first in the second semester exams. He rudely laughed with Lee Ho, saying he was a pauper orphan and only lived off their affluent taxpayers. Lee Ho couldn't take this bullying anymore and punished the rude man with all his might, punching him in the face with his fist. He thought he had justly punished the rude man. Then Jo Jae-hun brought equally rude parents to the school, in front of whom the principal knelt down and apologized, but his mother didn't care. She said that if Lee Ho is an orphan, he should be quieter than the rest of the world. The director apologized and said that she was to blame for the conflict. The rude mother agreed and decided to punish the principal for this, so she raised her hand at her and struck her. Watching this, Lee Ho once and for all realized that justice without strength would lead to even greater injustice, and he then decided he would now be like a shadow and never again draw attention to himself or stand out from the crowd in any way. From that day forward, he ceased to exist if he saw someone mistreated. He blended in with the gray masses year after year, not believing he had the power to protect anyone. When he looked at the instruction manual, he saw that he had to kill the monsters that killed the dead. 6 hours to complete the mission and 8 monsters in case of failure. Disaster awaits him. The first to appear in front of them was the first-level one-horned Enop of the first-level Lee Ho. It was shocking that he had ruined the principal. He apologized to the director for being unable to protect her, which made him feel hurt and offended. Then she was hit because of him. He remembered how gently she had hugged him and told him that now he could call her mom instead of the principal, so he wouldn't worry about it because that was his parents' job. For example, the director hugged Lee Ho when he was a child. She was happy to see him and said that he didn't have to apologize to her because he had nothing to apologize for. The headmistress added that he had grown tremendously during this time and could now protect everyone. The words of the headmistress came up again in his memories. Then to him little, she said that he was much kinder than many people, and that he should become a ray of light in this gloomy gray world and bring only good. Thinking about it, Lee Ho realized that he began to follow the director's instructions only after the end of the world. Before that, he had tried to be inconspicuous. At that moment, suddenly, behind the principal's back, he saw an attacking one-horned raccoon he could not allow to do her any harm. He easily stopped the one-horned raccoon with one hand because it was easy for him now. Lee Ho has learned a lot of things during this time. But Lee Ho thought about it because if he killed the raccoon, the principal would disappear again, and he didn't want that. But the principal told him not to think about it. The headmistress told him that now all he had to do was follow his chosen path. Lee Ho thought about his path for a moment. After fighting the one-horned raccoon, he realized that his path was to climb to the top of the tower, destroy it, and return to his former life. He easily defeated and dispatched the one-horned raccoon, but only time will tell if he chose the right path. As expected after the one-horned raccoon's victory, the director disappeared into light particles. Lee Ho said that she should rest in peace, his mom. He continued to move through the gloomy graveyard, and on his way, there were different monsters that he fought bravely. Chizal, going through the mission, also delved into the memories she couldn't take anymore. She remembered how a lovely guy noticed during her studies that she spent a lot of time studying and thoughtfully brought her vitamins. After exchanging pleasantries, they went their separate ways. Suddenly, something began to fall from the roof, and she was terrified. The passers-by who saw this picture watched in horror, but no one could help her. And Lish, the sportsman guy who was her friend, risked his life to rush to her aid and got there in time to cover her. Of course, Isol felt guilty because the guy had lost his leg. She blamed herself. If not for her, he would have had an excellent sporting future ahead of him. He showed up at the trial, accusing her of blaming everything that happened to him on her and no one else. The guilt began to consume Isol completely, and she couldn't do anything about it, so she kept saying she was guilty and asking for forgiveness. Despite the danger of the monster in front of her, she couldn't do anything about it. At that moment, Lee Ho came to cover her and shouted at her to pull herself together. But it is Isol Lee Ho who must destroy the orc. He asked her to do it, to pull herself together no matter what. The deceased must be put to rest with her help. But she couldn't because of her guilt. The spirit kept whispering to her that she was to blame for his death. He just wouldn't let her move. Holding back, the orc Lee Ho told her that he understood her. This guy meant a lot to her in her lifetime, but she should pull herself together and let him go. But with tears in her eyes, she could do nothing about it, for the spirit kept saying that he had lost everything through her fault, and he held her as if in a terrible embrace. Holding back the orc, Lee Ho continued to try to get her back. He said that the person who treasured her could really accuse her and asked her to think about it. Then she remembered that when she visited him in the hospital, he didn't blame her and asked her not to blame herself and not to be sad. When she remembered and realized what a nice guy he really was, that scary hug became a kind, sweet hug. Looking at Li Hong as he held back the orc for her and how he always put everything before himself, she realized that in him, she saw that guy from her youth. Thanks to Li Hongyu, she could still pull herself together and send that evil orc to the other world. The point of this mission is to come to terms with the death of people close to them, and it seems to be the most challenging mission they've ever been on. In the instructions, Li Ho saw that there was very little time left. He thought about the fact that he was able to help Yasol, but she was close by, and it looked like he wouldn't be able to help everyone. He realized that the only thing he could do to help the other players was to support them telepathically and hope they would make it through this ordeal. When he saw the church, he went into it. In front of the altar stood a dark silhouette of a man. Li Ho decided to come closer and see who it was. She turned around and was not surprised to see Li Ho, saying she was expecting him. He wasn't surprised to see her at all either, as if he had sensed that she was Li Ho and asked her snidely if she was waiting for him. Then, it became the terms of the vote, on whether or not the Day of Blood depended on the vote of the thugs on the altar of the 9th floor. If you agree to the altar, you should put a red crystal. If you refuse, you should put a blue crystal. However, the number of thugs on the floor is unknown, and if the 10th floor is chosen for Blood Day, several areas are merged into one. Once the areas are united, the thugs will begin a brutal hunt for other players according to their roles. Standing in front of Song Seo-young, Li Ho realized that for him to convince her to vote against the Day of Blood, she must have people close to her, but she doesn't seem to care about her loved ones. Li Ho thought maybe she's been indifferent since becoming a thug. Gathering himself, Li Ho suggested that she finish the conversation they had started in the lobby, and he asked her why she thought he was a great thug. Li Ho thought momentarily, and then Seon So-young replied that he almost always makes the proper and correct decisions. Did she think the great killer's authority was unshakable? He asked her if she had finally begun to trust him. Li Ho also thought that even though he doesn't know who the great killer is, he'll tell her it's him if she really thinks so. Sung So-young told him that she was beginning to trust him and asked him about his future plans and whether he wanted the 10th floor to become a Day of Blood. Li Ho replied that he thought it was too early to have a blood day, and Seon So-young asked why he thought that. Raising his eyes upwards, Li Ho said that he believed that whether they were soul killers or just players, they should also climb the tower. Looking up at the full moon, he added that he had no idea how many more floors they had to go through, but he was sure there were many more to come. He also said that if they ruin all the players after that, they won't likely last long in the tower. He argues his words as people about such a situation, saying that if all the rabbits died in the end, the dog would be boiled. He said that those who lose their favor will be thrown out of the tower, which is why the Day of Blood should be delayed as long as possible. Of course, Lee Ho realized that even if he made up what Xian So-young said, it could work since even the murderers were just pawns in the game for the tower. He realized that they weren't the only murderers. If he could convince Seon So-yeon, the others would vote for Blood Day, and then they wouldn't be able to fix anything. Holding the crystal in her hand, Song So-yeon said that she was beginning to think that everything that had happened to her was destined to happen to her. Lee Ho did not understand what she meant. Then she explained to him that each killer was assigned a unique ability. Saying that she knew how to change things, she used her hidden ability to offer an extra mission. The mission to hunt the Black Blood Wolf was given 50 minutes to complete, and the reward for completing it was that their wish would become the wish of all murderers. After reviewing the execution instructions, Lee Ho said if they passed the mission, they could postpone the Blood Day, and the voting results wouldn't be affected. Looking at Song So-young, he wondered if she knew her hidden ability because it was like fate's antics. Then, Song So-young said she wasn't sure if they could complete the mission in 50 minutes, because it wasn't clear where to look for the wolf in all those mountains. Then Lee Ho thought they would move on to Kensu to find the wolf faster and more efficiently. They got on him on horseback, and he quickly jumped. They soon found a level 35 black blood wolf, just an unrealistically scary giant monster. As they prepared to fight the wolf, they looked in the guide, which said that the wolf could spit out a very poisonous venom. Unfortunately, this time, Lee Ho didn't have the perfect shield, so he came up with the idea that he and Kensu would distract the wolf, and Sung Sun would attack it. Surprisingly, Song So-young agreed with his strategy, but added that even though he was a great killer, she wouldn't always obey him. After discussing the tactics, they began to fight. Lee Ho used his super technique of shadowless soul hunting. The wolf was a worthy opponent. In this brutal battle, the rest of the contestants had to use their skills to the best of their abilities. Just when they thought their plan had worked, Lee Ho shouted for everyone to be careful. He saw that the wolf was starting to draw poison, and that didn't bode well. He was releasing a lot of venom, a whole lake of it, and it was clear that if they missed and the wolf hit them, they would inevitably die. Brave Lee Ho rushed into battle with this dangerous, scary black wolf, but it was clear that he could not cope with it alone. Sung Sun came to the rescue, but she had to get as close to the wolf as possible for her magic bullet skill to work better. Of course, Kensu's brave and courageous pet was not left out, daringly rushing at the black wolf with his super punches. Suddenly, the wolf caught Kensu like a serpent and wrapped his tail around him with such power that he could not free himself. It was horrible, but Lee Ho couldn't just lose his pet again. He loudly started yelling to Kensu that he was calling him off, but it didn't seem to be working. All their attempts to defeat the wolf were even. Even Song So-young's magic bullets had no effect on the wolf, as if the wolf didn't care about their attacks. Not knowing what to do, Lee Ho thought of releasing the shadowless soul hunting technique. Still, at his level, he wouldn't even be able to separate the wolf's leg. They still couldn't defeat the black wolf. He was just invincible. Looking at the wolf and around him, Lee Ho realized that his vision was going down, and he began to see badly. He decided that it was the poison of the wolf that had somehow penetrated his body. The wolf is so powerful that nothing can take him, not bullets, not even the technique of bestial soul hunting, not even his skin can penetrate. When there was no hope, Lee Ho thought of something. He asked Seon So-yeon to prepare for the biggest attack. Looking at the tired and exhausted Lee Ho Sun-sung, he admired that, even in such a state, he was still so smart and brave. The problem is that Song So-young could only use her ability once per fight, but she had faith in Lee Ho and prepared to attack. In the fight, Lee Ho realized his mistake. He couldn't defeat the wolf before. He just tried to kill it with one blow. He realized that in his condition, he couldn't kill the wolf with one blow, but he had to do it so he wouldn't be ashamed in front of his teacher. Also, Song Song realized that her magic bullets are round and not effective for penetration. They need to be shaped like normal bullets. She was able to reshape the bullets, and their penetration power increased many times, so she attacked the black wolf. Luckily, it worked, and the newly shaped bullet still penetrated the wolf's impenetrable hide, making a massive hole in it. Together, they managed to defeat the black wolf and complete this mission. They were tired, but happy that they had succeeded. Since they passed the mission, now their vote represents all the soul killers, and they did vote against Blood Day on the 10th floor. Suddenly, Lee Ho started to make a cut on the wolf. Sung So-young was shocked by what she saw, and she didn't understand what he was doing. She asked him why he was doing it. Lee Ho replied that he had read the guide, and it said that after the victory, he should take out the wolf's essence and eat it, so he took out his essence. He offered Song Seo-yeon to eat the wolf essence, but she felt sick just at the thought, so Lee Ho sat her down and felt that something had changed. When he ate the wolf essence, he became immune to all the poisons in the tower, which made him very happy, and Seon So-young couldn't believe he could eat it. Sulong said that he was able to find the wolf quickly and identify the wolf's ability the first time, and he asked how he did it. Lee Ho replied that it was all due to his power as a great killer. Sung Seo-yeon said that she didn't expect anything else from a great killer. Then Seon So-yeon asked what happened, and Lee Ho said that since there would be no Blood Day, it would be harder for them to replenish the number of players. Because the soul killers must reduce the number of players, they will be fined if they do not follow the individual plan. Sung So-young asked if it was difficult for him. Lee Ho thought that since she agreed with him so easily, he had authority over her. All the deceased were laid to rest. Players went through the mission, returned with different emotions and feelings, and laughed hysterically. Although the monsters were weak, this mission was difficult emotionally. Someone met with his family, which is very hurtful to the soul. Others met their beloved friends, and they all had to come to terms and let their loved ones go once and for all into the next world. As everyone sat there grieving over their losses, Young-woo suddenly stood up and told his comrades they needed to pack unexpectedly from him. He was right. More floors were waiting for them. Yet the players were all able to set aside their regrets and return alive to the lobby. It's good that no one gave up on the mission. Looking at them, Lee Ho realized that because they had become closer and had begun to support each other, they had become much stronger than they had been at the beginning of the ordeal. Having gathered their spirits, the players continued training. At that moment, they heard an announcement that the mission on the 10th floor was about to begin. This mission was called Measurement Trials. According to the rules, players were assigned to specific areas of the location,